Okay, everyone, if we could get our seats, please. Welcome to Budget and Tax. 18 bills a day, clearly the hardest working committee in the legislature. The listing out there is the correct order, so you'll know when you're coming up. Everybody has 2 minutes. You'll hear a buzzer when there are 10 seconds left, and you'll hear a louder buzzer when your 2 minutes are up. Other than that, there are no rules. Well, few rules. But we want to obviously hear what you all have to say. There's a number of bills on the list here that have a significant number of witnesses. We always appreciate the Me Too. If we've got something additional you want to say, we always want to hear it. All right, Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Have 3 quick, wonderful bills here. Make this afternoon go really fast. First, we are going to start with Senate Bill 393. No, we're going to start with 419.
Happy to accommodate.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, in the 2022 session, we passed legislation that defined and codified therapeutic childcare programs and set dedicated funding for 2 fiscal years. Prior to the passage of the 2022 legislation, these programs had been funded by MSDE at different levels using both state and federal funds, but with no fiscal certainty. Interventions at younger ages have a huge potential to alter a child's future developmental trajectory, and the success rates of these programs results in millions of dollars of savings to the state and counties by reducing long-term intensive special education expenditures. Senate Bill 419 will remove the funding sunset for these programs and give them the fiscal certainty that they need to continue. The benefits from the therapeutic child care programs are substantial and need to be protected, and I ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 419.
Thank you. Looks like you have a panelist.
I do, and I think there's some others that are with us here today, if they want to come up to the table. Sarah Monaghan and Austin Morris.
Have an Austin on here.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members, and thank you for this great opportunity to be with you today in strong support of this therapeutic child care legislation. Special thanks to Dr. King, Senator Nancy King, for her ongoing leadership for decades for young children, and especially for the particularly vulnerable and the youngest of children we're talking about today. I'm Dr. Jimmy Venza, clinical psychologist and executive director of the Laurie Center for Children's Social Emotional Wellness in Rockville, where I've been for 20 years. Laurie Center is home, one of our homes in the nation for infant and early childhood mental health care. And we're part of Maryland's fabric for specialized early childhood care, along with 2 other nationally recognized institutions, Kennedy Krieger and the ARC. These programs provide highly specialized childcare for some of our most vulnerable infants and young children and their families. Children all face great adversity, and that adversity looks a little different. For Laurie Center, these are families who have mental health and children who have mental health complications, facing adversity and trauma. For Kennedy Krieger, the children are facing developmental disabilities such as autism, and for the ARC, primarily medical fragile needs, all requiring specialized support from multidisciplinary teams of educators, health and mental health professionals. All also have safety concerns and disruptions in learning. So early intervention is the way to set children and their families on the right path, not only in the short term, but throughout the lifespan. Our programs also provide training for the early childhood workforce and spread best practice through research and around both the state and the country. And for years, we've been vulnerable to budget cuts. And so these last 2 years has been incredible support for this funding. And this allows for ongoing access and continuity of care. Today, I urge you to vote favorable on SB 419. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, committee members and Senator King. Thank you so much. My name is Sarah Monahan, and I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 419. This bill is important to me because my daughter Elizabeth was born 4 months early and weighed less than 2 pounds. If you want a comparison in size, these water bottles here are probably about the same size she was when she was born. Doctors told us if she lived the first 7 days that her chances for long-term survival were good, but she was extremely high risk for long-term complications, severe and long-term complications of prematurity, meaning that her future was very uncertain. She survived. We were thrilled, but we quickly learned that surviving and thriving were two very different things. And even a mother's love is not enough to help a child with her needs thrive, sorry. Sometimes survive too. We looked for hope and we found it with World of Care's Medical Child Care Center. We brought them an infant who was 5 months old and not meeting a single developmental milestone, who couldn't drink a bottle, who needed oxygen 24 hours a day. They taught us how to be the kind of parents she needed. They taught her to eat and crawl and walk and play. After 3 years, we left the program as competent advocates for our daughter, and we left with a child who was ready for preschool, meeting most of her milestones, happy and energetic. I'm proud to tell you that today she's 16 years old, taking AP classes and college classes in school, looking at colleges and playing goalie for her soccer team. There are thousands of families in Maryland who are facing similar challenges to what we went through, who have children with medical needs, and they all deserve the same opportunity. I firmly believe and know in my heart that without the early intervention, the therapy, and the services that she received from World of Care, she would not have the same future that she's looking at today. I urge you to support this bill to give more children the opportunity to reach their full potential. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add one thing? You know,
Yeah.
this is one of those things that I think every year we're down here just begging for the money to keep this program going. And it's hard for them to plan for any kind of a future with the program, not knowing that they're going to have funding. So that's why this bill is so important.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Any questions? Thank you very much. Let's go to 393 now.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, 6 years ago, this committee passed legislation that established the Community Colleges Facilities Renewal Grant Program to provide grants for improvements, repairs, and deferred maintenance projects at Maryland's 16 community colleges. The grant is based on a percentage of the Community College Construction Grant Program, and each year, 8 colleges are eligible for the grant. No college can receive the grant 2 years in a row. This grant program has been very helpful in funding repairs and improvements at our community colleges, but as our schools continue to age and construction costs continue to rise, the funding needs to keep pace. Senate Bill 393 will increase the funding from 5% of the annual appropriation for the Community College Construction Grant to 10% and allow all 16 community colleges to receive funding each fiscal year. We continue to ask our community colleges to try to hold the line on tuitions, but without resources to fund necessary repairs and improvements, increased tuition may be their only option. Senate Bill 393 will help our community colleges continue to provide an affordable, high-quality higher education in an environment that supports student safety and learning, and I ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 393.
Good afternoon, Chair Gazzoni, members of the committee. My name is Brad Phillips. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and I want to thank Senator King for introducing this piece of legislation. The challenge is that the current facilities renewal grant only allows for half of the colleges to receive funding, and it's pegged to whatever is in the Community College Capital Construction Grant Program. Some years that's $80 million. This year, for example, there's 38. So the first round of colleges will get a certain amount, and the next year, another 8, the remaining 8 colleges will get a completely different amount based on that. And there's huge inequities from year to year. This would level set all of the colleges to be able to help them move their deferred projects forward. Currently, there's $115 million worth of facilities renewal projects in the queue. This actually helps by fixing repairs, windows, doors, boilers, and even electrical upgrades. And failure to repair these can actually end up costing more in the long run, including causing, environmental issues and other health issues. So this will also allow our colleges to work, instead of using their operational funds, to be able to use that for instructional purposes. And we urge a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mary Bolt, President of Cecil College. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. The award of the State Facilities Grant renewal funds has provided Cecil College with the opportunities to effectively address some of our aging infrastructure, and the grants provided a mean to meaningfully engage in projects that were previously deferred or identified as a need during facilities and systems assessment. Some of our projects with this funding included building roof replacements and variable air volume replacements within our HVAC. I ask for your favorable support, and by doing so, you're supporting community colleges, and Marylanders will continue to have access to well-maintained community colleges. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Questions for the center of this panel? I think there's somebody out. Is somebody from the MACO here? Oh, there you are. Also in favor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, esteemed committee. Brianna January with the Maryland Association of Counties in strong support of SB 393. Committee, I won't repeat what's already been said about the bill itself, but what I will say is that MACO has been supportive of this effort and others that support our community colleges for years now. And this year feels a bit different, given the rather dramatic, significant cuts to state aid to community colleges as proposed by the budget. And so these cuts come as our community colleges are experiencing growth in enrollment, and as the blueprint for Maryland's future really asks community colleges to do a lot more. And so counties simply ask that you consider that and take it into consideration as you deliberate on this bill and any others that support our community colleges, which serve our mutual constituents. And I know that this committee will work hard to make our community colleges whole, and MACO stands ready to support any efforts to do so. With that, we urge a favorable report for SB 393. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you all very much. Senate Bill 434.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, as of fiscal year 2022, there were over 3.5 million registered book borrowers in Maryland. Those residents visited libraries across the state over 3.5 million times and borrowed over 47 million items. The State Library Resource Center, SLRC, is the state library for Maryland and supports our libraries across the state by providing cooperative, cost-effective resources and services for our libraries and their customers. SLRC is funded at a per state resident rate. For fiscal year 2024, the SLRC was at a rate of $1.97 per state resident. Senate Bill 434 will gradually increase funding over the next 6 fiscal years, with FY 2020 at a rate of $2.52 per state resident. This bill was before this committee last year and was unanimously passed by the Senate Unfortunately, the House did not act on our bill. This legislation will allow our state library to continue to offer the services that are so important to our libraries and our residents of all ages, and I ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 434.
Panel can begin.
My name is Seth Hirschberger. I'm a resident of Salisbury, Maryland in Wycomico County, and I'm the director of the library serving that county. My submitted written testimony emphasized a couple of areas, just 2 areas of many that I've seen a real impact on our library and our community as a direct result of the strength of the State Library Resource Center, which makes Maryland libraries strong across the state. In a typical year, more than half of the professional development training that we are able to provide for our staff is provided by the State Library Resource Center. That's training that we need, that's essential for our staff, and without it, it would put more pressure on our library and our local county governments to provide more funding. But we have that strong support from the state through the State Library Resource Center. Also, the State Library Resource Center offers us the opportunity to assure and guarantee the residents of Wycomico County that we'll always be able to find whatever library resource book that they're interested in getting access to and reading, no matter how rare, obscure, or expensive it is. We can look anybody in the eye in our county and say, we can get that for you. And that's as a result of the interlibrary loan program that the State Library Resource Center facilitates. I urge support for Senate Bill 435 because of the impact it has on Wycomico County and my community. Thank you.
I thank you, Chairman Gazzoni, and esteemed members of the committee. Thank you to Senator King for sponsoring this bill. I'm Liz Sunderman-Zinger. I'm the chief of the State Library Resource Center, and I'm asking you to support our annual funding increases. We support Maryland's digital equity by selecting and paying for databases and other digital resources that directly impact the bottom line of county and regional library systems. We provide high-speed internet access to public libraries, 25 municipalities, and other agencies, and our network maintains a 99.98% uptime. That's really good. We provide statewide interlibrary loan services like Seth said. So anyone, anywhere in the state can request a book from anywhere else in the state and have it delivered to their local branch within 2 days. We also facilitate national and international lending for many of the counties in Maryland. So if there's a customer in Allegheny County who wants a book that's only held at the University of Toronto, my staff use software and our staff time to broker that and make sure that they get it in a timely fashion. But you know, costs are going up. We're in the last year of our contract with the current vendor for the software. When we put out an RFP, all signs are indicating that we're going to get a 30% increase in that software cost, no matter what vendor we go with. We provide the support for the Library Training Institute, a pathway to certification for new library workers that allows them to advance and be successful in their careers. And we support this industry building program by offering our staff as instructors and providing virtual and on-site conferences. So I just wanted you to note that every year of flat funding is a cut. Currently, our staffing is so lean that if we have any increased costs through COLAs or other wage increases, we will have to cut positions. We do not want to cut statewide delivery or access to our resources, and we do not want to pass these increasing costs off to other county or regional library systems where the counties are not likely to be able to fund them. So by supporting the centralized costs of the State Library Resource Center, you're decreasing the overall amount needed to be spent in individual counties and regions of the state. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of this esteemed committee. My name is Dr. Michelle Farmer. I'm the immediate past chair of the Enoch Pratt Free Library Board of Trustees and a member of the Legislative Committee. I'm here in support of Senate Bill 434. In the interest of being efficient in our time, I'm ceding my time to the previous testimonies. I have submitted written testimony, and we truly, truly appreciate your support for this important bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions for this panel? We have one. Anybody, questions for the panel? Okay, Ms. Hewlett, is it?
Yes.
Hi, welcome.
Hello. Hello, Chairman Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosa Pepe, and the distinguished committee members. My name is Elizabeth Hewlett, and I am the Director of the Western Maryland Regional Library. I can't express to you enough the positive impact that the State Library Resource Center has on the rural libraries in Maryland, and particularly those here in Western Maryland, the smallest and poorest region in the state. With their support, the citizens of Western Maryland have access to a solid core collection of online resources, professional development opportunities, and access to a world-class interlibrary loan system, which opens up the might of public library collections statewide to even the most remote communities in Garrett and Allegheny counties. Just this past year, the State Library Resource Center took on a significant amount of the cost of the regional's interlibrary loan delivery system. This freed up much needed for my local libraries, while at the same time significantly improved the efficiency of the whole system. The passage of SB 434 will ensure that the State Library Resource Center can continue its important work as a cornerstone institution for all Maryland libraries. You have my written testimony, which further describes the importance of the State Library Resource Center and the passage of this bill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Questions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, moving on to Senator Lewis Young. You can bring your panel up.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of B&T. For the record, Senator Karen Lewis Young from Frederick County District 3. And I am presenting today with my panel the new and improved SB 385. So if you read the bill, it's obsolete. If you read the fiscal note, it's obsolete. Read the amendments because this bill has been totally changed. So when I give you a little bit of the background as to why this bill is necessary, what problem we're trying to fix, I'll also explain why this bill has evolved into a very different format. So in Frederick County, one of the things I heard over the years again and again as an elected official is the education formula disproportionately hurts Frederick County. So started to dig, why is that? Talked to counsel in EEE, who sent me to Scott Gates to better understand how the formula works and why it hurts Frederick County. So the short story, why it hurts Frederick County, is enrollment is taken at a certain point in time, September 30th, and then the budget goes into effect for the next year. So the enrollment September the 30th does not at all reflect the actual enrollment on July 1. In fact, in Frederick County, last year, we had 1,200 more students than were actually funded according to the formula. So I looked at ways that we could start to correct that, as well as other counties that might be also affected by this growth phenomenon. And as I was talking to Mr. Gates, he said, why don't you contact Delegate Wu? He had a bill on this last year. So I looked at his bill and read the fiscal note, and I called him and I said, well, that bill's probably not going anywhere because of the fiscal note, but let's see if we can cast the net a bit more narrower and really address those counties that are growing so fast that this is highly problematic. And so we rewrote the bill, made some minor changes to it, brought it back. And then I heard the message loud and clear. You don't want to bring bills with big fiscal notes forward. So for a variety of reasons, that being high up there, we changed the bill into a task force. But it isn't just because of the fiscal note, although it's major reason. Coincidentally, we did bring it down. Last year it was 40 million. The fiscal note we got back from the first version of this bill was 39.1 million. So we did bring it down. Not quite enough. Why a task force? You know, this is really a complicated issue. You know, how many counties does it affect? How many years data do you look at? Growth over 3 years, growth over 5 years. Certainly when I looked at it, I looked at 5 years. Why? 2020 was an anomaly. Almost everybody lost enrollment that year. So I looked at 5 years. Do you look at percentage growth? Do you look at actual enrollment numbers? Do you look at a hybrid of the two? Those are things that rather than debate it in a bill, I felt was really important to set up a task force to address this phenomenon. So we have a case study here, Frederick County. And why Frederick County? Our enrollment is growing, our student enrollment is growing by at least twice the rate of the next fastest growing county, which is Carroll County, by the way. Actually, there are 4 counties that over the past 5 years have seen increases in enrollment growth. Frederick, Carroll, Charles, and Anne Arundel. Now that's percentage-wise. That's a percentage increase over 5 years. So in Frederick County, our biggest challenge, because we are also the fastest growing county in the state, so it makes sense our student enrollment would be growing quicker than any other county as well. What we hear from our citizens is infrastructure is not keeping pace with growth. And when I think of infrastructure, it's not just roads and bridges, it's investing in our education as well. So that's high on the list for all levels of government. And that's why you will see with me today, our county executive, a member of our county council, the president of our board of ed, and the president pro tem of the board of aldermen, also known to some of you as the city council. And we also have a citizen advocate with us who's a parent that will give you that perspective as well. So if you want to see what the new bill looks like, what the task force looks like, it's in page 2 and 3 of the amendment. And I truly believe that by setting up this task force, we will help determine, one, how significant the problem is and what is the appropriate methodology for addressing it. And now I would like to pass the conversation on to my panel, who each has a unique perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Chairman Gazzoni, Vice Chair Rosa Pepp, and committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of SB 385 as amended. And for the record, I'm Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater. So Senator Lewis Young has explained the purpose and the current state of this bill, and I'd like to speak to the need and impact of the current problem. Frederick County, and you'll keep hearing it, is the fastest growing jurisdiction in Maryland, and that trend is particularly apparent in our public school enrollment. My written testimony includes a graphic that shows the growth rate of our Frederick County Public Schools enrollment compared to other LEAs. And over the past 5 years, our enrollment has grown 9.8% compared to 2.4% the county behind us, which is Carroll, as was already mentioned. This growth is a great endorsement of the quality education that FCPS provides and an asset to the Frederick County community as a whole. Families are moving to Frederick County for our incredible quality of life and our well-regarded schools. Entrepreneurs are setting their vision into motion, and businesses are relocating and expanding in Frederick County, in part because of our excellent school system. However, because the state share of per pupil funding is determined using enrollment that is measured on September 30th of the prior year, counties do not see state funding for any growth after that point until the following year. And there is a disproportionate burden on rapid growth jurisdictions like Frederick County and others. There is a mechanism currently in the code to account for and hold counties harmless for enrollment decreases. And we believe there should be a mechanism to account for rapid enrollment growth as well. As student enrollment increases, school systems and the counties that fund them need appropriate state support for the infrastructure and resources necessary to meet the needs of each and every student at the time that they are in our schools. Our growing population and student enrollment is also an asset to the state. Adjusting the funding formula to account for rapid growth will help Frederick County and rapidly growing jurisdictions to be better partners in implementing the pillars of the blueprint and helping to unlock future economic growth and prosperity throughout Maryland. We urge a favorable report on SB 385 as amended and appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. Excuse me. My name is Karen Yoho. I am currently the president of the Board of Education, Frederick County. And I previously taught in Frederick County schools for 25 years. And I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak today. You've heard the numbers. You know, I could give it to you another way, 4 times the amount of the next fastest, Carroll County. The lag from that September 30th through, and I'll give you this. I have submitted written testimony with also a chart prepared by our CFO to show the actual numbers. And you will see that decrease a little bit in during the time of COVID. Frederick actually did better and was mentioned. There's holding counties harmless. I know a lot of the board members from your various counties, and all of us supported that. So I think it also is fair to look at the opposite side when a county is growing, because this right now it's Frederick, but it could hit your county sometime soon. In the last 4 years, we grew by almost 4,000 students, and we're expected to get another 1,000 next year. You know, providing an escalation factor that captures the enrollment from previous years will assist in mitigating all of those lags. It's not just in the classroom, that's a major factor, but it hits a whole system with custodians, food nutrition services, bus drivers. Everywhere when we get that many students, it means people have to really come together, be creative, and figure out ways. And we do that well in Frederick County, but our students shouldn't have to settle for us doing well. We should be able to have those resources. So I thank you very much, and hope you'll find favorable on this bill as amended. Thank you.
I'm Jerry Donald. I'm a member of the Frederick County Council. I'm also just recently retired as a Frederick County public school teacher after 35 years. To talk a little bit about what's going on in Frederick County, you've heard about growth. In effect, COVID, when it came along, accelerated trends that had already been happening. If you take a look at a Washington Post article from about a year ago, we were #1, I believe it was, in cash sales, not just in the state, but amongst the country, especially Western Frederick County. My district had almost 50% of the sales were cash sales. What does that mean? That means people want to live there. And there's a lot of pressure to move out to Frederick County. People that did not want to do a 2-hour commute 5 days a week don't mind doing it 1 or 2 days a week because they can work remotely. That said, people have moved out there. We have a school situation that is overcrowded and continuing to become more overcrowded. We cannot control all of this growth, simply put, because the way smart growth works, a lot of it happens in municipalities or with things that were done under previous boards and commissions. We just have to live with the effects. What does it do to schools? Well, you've heard that in effect in September of 23, you get the numbers that will affect fiscal year 25. That means that we will often have over 1,000 more students than we are being funded. That is a problem with equity and fairness. That is completely unfair to us because we have to pick up the cost of all of that. That means special ed teachers have a higher caseload. That means there are more students in a class that were unexpected. That means more textbooks are needed. That means that there are problems in guidance perhaps, or school administration. All these are large pressures that continue to grow and grow and grow. The impact just continues to go out through the system, and you can only spread this out so far. It accelerates our need to build schools. But in the end, it comes back to getting a fair number for the number of people in school at the time for our budget year. I'd like to thank Senator Lewis Young for bringing this to you. This is a very important issue, and I hope that you will vote favorably on Senate Bill 385. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am here today in my role as Alderwoman for the city of Frederick, the second largest city in Maryland. I do thank the senator for bringing this bill forward, and I think that the task force approach will be very good because it will let us continue to engage and have the conversation specifically for municipalities like the city of Frederick. I'm largely Me Too, but I just did want to highlight the fact that just about 1 out of 4 every students at FCPS are in the city of Frederick. So we really do believe that it's our responsibility to be good partners in driving for solutions for this problem. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Josh Bokey. I am also a resident of Frederick County in the city of Frederick, and also a parent with a student in Frederick County Public Schools. And I want to first, I think, thank members of not just this committee, but the continued commitment from the Maryland General Assembly on investing in public education. We know that that is not consistent and uniform amongst all the states, but here in Maryland, it continues to be a priority. And as a parent, I know I am very thankful for that. I also am thankful for, I think that we have a very strong school system at FCPS. And if you look at terms of everyone as a panel member here, they're either a grandparent or a parent or a educator or prior educator of the system. And I think that's a real testament to the fortune we have. But we do know that it is under strain, and you have heard that here this afternoon, not just in terms of additional classroom size, but I think as was spoken here earlier, the impact that has on resources for reading and math specialists and the time and attention that educators are able to give to all students. And in our family, I feel very fortunate that if any of our students need, our kids need additional resources, we are able to seek them out, right? If it's a math tutor or whatever the case may be. But we know that not all families have that ability. And so when we're not able to adequately fund all students in the school system, we know that that strain can disproportionately impact students that families that may not have the means or the ability to seek out those resources. So I do respectfully request a favorable action with amendment onto this, and do appreciate your time here this afternoon, and appreciate Senator Lewis Young for bringing this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good question. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you very much. It's actually less a question than a very brief suggestion. I discussed a variation of this with Senator Lewis Young this morning. I get the issue you have, interested in learning more about it, interested in trying to be helpful. You mentioned in passing school construction, which is a problem as well when you have a fast growing county. And it's a problem every place because you have deteriorating schools. And several years ago, actually it's 2018, because Senator Lewis Young showed me the bill. We passed legislation creating a work group in Prince George's County on looking at how we could build or repair new schools faster and keep the schools in better repair with some new techniques. And what came out of that was an analysis that showed, and I'm sure it'll show if you look in Frederick County, I've looked at it across the state, the variation in cost per student in new schools is dramatic. Dramatic. And it's because how schools are designed varies all over the place. And you know this being involved in it in terms of the local politics of the teachers and the community, and we want this and we want that and the other thing. And the reality is that that means our school construction dollars don't go as far as they could. So I'd encourage you in this process or a separate process to really look at how you can bring the cost per student, not the cost per square foot, but the cost per student to a more equitable level to be able to do more schools for more kids faster. And that we did that study in Prince George's County, made a little bit of progress on it, not as much as you like. The other is, as I think you may know, we're the first jurisdiction in the nation to use public-private partnerships to build schools. And we've gone through the first tranche of it. It's worked. We're now in the second tranche of it. It also brings more discipline into the design of schools. And it also ties the maintenance of schools to the building of the school. Right now, as the county government people know, and say from time to time, the county government of the state provides a school system with the building. It comes free. The building comes free to the school system, but then the school system has to maintain it out of operating costs. And so it's a mismatch between designing the school and maintaining the school. And a public-private partnership puts them together. The folks who design the school are going to have to maintain it for 30 years. So I just encourage you as you're dealing with this problem to look at that. And if some of us who worked on these issues can be of help, we're here to help. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You. Senator Jackson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to piggyback on what Senator Rosebeth said. I have, Prince George's County's process has worked. We have moved that to the other two counties that I represent, Charles and Calvert as well. This year we have a piece of legislation I want to speak to quickly for that. And I think Baltimore City engaged as well. So it's worthwhile. Take a look at that.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to skip the next one because Senator McKay is caught up in committee. So we're going to move to Senator Rosapep, 422.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 422 is fairly simple. It extends to retired U.S. Foreign Service officers the subtraction modification that is currently available to military retirees. As some of you know, I served as U.S. Ambassador to Romania under the Clinton administration. And some people have the image of Foreign Service officers as spending all their time going to swanky cocktail parties. And I went to a few swanky cocktail parties. But most Foreign Service officers, most of the time, are serving in harm's way. And Ambassador Ricciardoni, who's going to be speaking, I think, online, served most of his career in the Middle East. And we all know the Middle East is a very dangerous place. He served in Iraq, he served in Afghanistan, he served in Turkey. And most Foreign Service officers are in harm's way some of their career. Some, over 250 since the 1930s, have died in the line of duty. Even the extreme case on the other side, which is my situation, I was in a pro-American country, safe, never had any problem. But in December of 1998, during the continuing conflict in Iraq, where the U.S. was policing a no-fly zone in Iraq, we got intelligence that there were folks in Romania who were tied to extremists who were allied with folks in Iraq who had been chatting about perhaps we should attack the U.S. ambassador in Romania. And so they told me that, and I said, that does not sound good. So we beefed up security, and the security is provided primarily by the host government. And so for about a month, I had a convoy of Romanian security forces who took me every place that I had to go. And I was fine. At a certain point, the dispute in Iraq got resolved about the specifics of the no-fly zone, and it was over. But I'm just saying that this is real for Foreign Service officers. They're serving the national interest of the country. Many of them are in harm's way. Many of them have been injured or died in the line of duty. And I think giving them the same recognition and support that we give to our military officers is totally appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Senator. I think we'll go right to your witness.
Great.
Ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Thank you, Senator Rosa Pepe, for introducing this legislation. It really is an honor and a privilege to observe your proceedings today, and especially to be invited to testify on this important matter. I believe that Senate Bill 422 really is a matter of sound public policy, very much in the interest of the state of Maryland. Thank you, Senator Rosa Pepe, for citing the main purpose to bring the treatment of foreign service pensions, the tax treatment, the income tax treatment, into line to some degree with the way Maryland treats U.S. military pensions. I believe that is a matter of sound public policy. Maryland is competing with other states to bring in to sustain a healthy, modest population growth and bring in people who will continue to advance the interests of the state in continuing that population growth, expanding the tax base, even while reducing some of the income tax burden on the retirees. By and large, the military people come in, not only rightly should be honored for their service to the Republic and thus the state, but they also bring something to the state. And I guess that's the point I'd like to also enhance. Foreign service officers, likewise, we have served our country more often overseas. We're deployed typically away from family and friends in this country for about 2/3 of our careers. As Senator Rosa Pepe has stated, many of us have faced hostility. I certainly have, being assigned both to Afghanistan and Iraq. My embassy was bombed in Turkey with a suicide bomber when I was there. At the outset of my career, we were shot at in Turkey as well. It's something we do because we believe we're doing something that's bigger than ourselves, as military people do. It is meaningful, and while we all hope that we won't have to pay the ultimate sacrifice, some do, and just the sacrifices we make in our everyday lives are more than compensated by the feeling of what we're doing for our countries, whether we're serving overseas or back stateside. So parity with the military is one good reason to do it. But the other is, I think that Maryland does need to compete with other states in bringing in people who are educated, public service minded, and want to give back to our communities. I've been honored to be appointed just this month to the Governor's Commission on American Middle Eastern Affairs, and through that I hope to advance Maryland's connectivity and competitiveness in bringing in foreign investment and people to benefit from our great medical establishments, our higher education, advance our development, and so forth. That's the kind of people foreign service retirees are, just as our military retirees are. We stay connected with the world. We stay connected in our industries. We stay connected with American national security, and we care about our communities. We're proud to have come to Maryland. My wife and I did have to consider the tax disadvantages in doing so. There are other states that, if we only considered the taxes, Maryland would not have been competitive. There's a lot else that attracted us to Maryland, and including the ability, the high quality of life, all the great things the state does, the way it takes care of its citizens, but also the ability to be close to the national centers of national security in Washington. So I'm glad to be a Maryland citizen, and I commend this committee for bringing forward this legislation. I hope you will advance it to the full General Assembly and that the governor will sign it into law.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for sharing your story, and appreciate your service very much. Any questions for the witness or for the senator? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senate Bill 43. Senator Haynes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of B&T Committee. Senator Antonio Hayes from the 40th Legislative District. For the record, I will be very brief, Mr. Chair. I know there's a lot of testimony in Senate Bill 43, but I want to tell you how I came to the conclusion of this legislation, which I've had some conversations with planning. This may not be the resolution we look for, but I do want to just provide a little bit of background on how we got here. There in my district, in 40th Legislative District, where we have a lot of buildings that have a lot of historical significance. The community had led a project by which they were in the process of renovating a historic mansion. Because of some disagreement with MHT staff and the developer, who insisted that to make the project financially stable, they had to make certain alterations. And after this committee approved a $250,000 bond to even renovate it, the mansion burned to the ground. And so there is no historic building to preserve, which could have been an asset to the community. I think we're joined online by Ernest Valerie, who have a little bit more information about that, who had that experience. On the other hand, at the same time, a couple of months later, we secured about $10 million to build a brand new recreation center in a school that had been vacant for a number of years. Folks had moved in there. They were doing, illegal drugs, prostitution, other things. In order to get into the building, they had to take police. We were in the process, the mayor, we scheduled a press conference to make an announcement to repurpose the building, to build a brand new recreation center for the community. And only to find out that it was interrupted by MHT, which took a couple of months only to come back and tell us, well, it was, it had significance in the architecture, something called brutalist architecture, and that to mitigate it, you have to put a plaque there, right? Is just another part of the difficulty, whereas I don't think the agency taking the community impact on communities and some of these situations. I just think that we could do a better job. I had a chance to meet with the, planning secretary and some of the folks at MHT. They provided me a great deal of information of why this may not be the direct path. But I do say, I think the processes that are in place now aren't satisfactory to the type of progress that we'd like to make in Baltimore. And so this may not be the appropriate tool, but this may not be the last time you see me here as we learn more about this process. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to share with you all this afternoon.
Thank you, Senator. So any questions for Senator? Mr. Valerie?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add that in terms of historic preservation, I think I've earned my medal as a preservationist. In fact, we renovated the old St. Michael's Church, where we have the Ministry of Brewing. We've renovated the old Professional Arts Building, where we converted an historic office building into 96 apartments with retail on the ground floor. And we did the Chesapeake building, which is right behind Penn Station, as well as a bathhouse in West Baltimore, a historic gas station and bathhouse that we renovated into apartments and retail. What I've noticed, because we went through this kind of traumatic experience with the Sellers Mansion that ultimately ended up burning. But before it burned, and that because squatters were going into the building and taking drugs, before it burned, someone had actually fallen in that building and they were scavengers, basically. I mean, it was a really unsafe place. And we didn't get to build that because, the MHT wanted a dramatic staircase to be rebuilt, even though the historic one had been taken out. And it would have rendered the project infeasible because we go from 15 units to just 6 units. Simple math tells you that it can't carry, and we got what we got. So I just want to add that historic preservation has to be rational, and it cannot take priority over health and safety issues. And I think that pretty much happens, but it also has to be feasible. And what I've noticed in particular is that in minority communities, buildings tend to...
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Well, in minority communities, the most negative effects happen in minority communities because there isn't the kind of capital to do some of the things that the MHT folks are looking for. And sometimes those things aren't rational, it's just personal. And I also think these standards are why there's a lot more decay, in particular of historic buildings or things that have been designated historic in low income and minority communities. And we really have to look at that and question why. The response time also in minority communities are longer as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Questions? Thank you very much. I have two signed up as unfavorable, Ann Jones and Elizabeth Hughes. You want to come up?
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Hughes. I'm the Director of the Maryland Historical Trust and Maryland State Historic Preservation Officer. Our agency is within the Department of Planning. I'm here to give testimony opposed to Senate Bill 43. We certainly support the Senator's desire to ensure that historic preservation tools are used to redevelop historic properties and to expedite review processes involving historic properties. Arbitration, however, that opens up many of the intermediate decisions of our agency that we must make as we administer these grant, tax credit, and easement programs will really disrupt our ability to efficiently administer these programs and ensure predictability of decision-making for applicants. Appeal processes already do exist in these programs, particularly for the tax credit and easement programs. These are of no cost to the applicant. They may appeal decisions of the director to the MHT Board of Trustees, which is appointed by the governor. And if they're displeased with that result, they can always seek relief through the circuit court. In the Sellers Mansion case that we just heard, I think it's an interesting example. That was a case where the tax credit application, as you may know, the competitive commercial tax credit application is rated and ranked. It doesn't work as a true tax credit. It's more like a grant program. We received the application from the developer the day that it was due. Typically, we like to work with applicants on their application to ensure it's approvable before it comes in. But it came the day of, and so we were not able to work through any of these issues, which were with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. Those are federal standards that we apply to state and federal tax credits. We did not hear from the developer in terms of seeking an appeal to our board, nor did we get a response when we asked if we could continue to work with them to ensure the project would be approvable for a federal tax credit. There was a full demolition of the interior in that case. We didn't require reconstruction of a historic staircase. Hopefully we could have worked through those issues, but it's true that sometimes redevelopment projects, because of the project pro forma, doesn't work well with the tax credit. I would simply conclude to say that arbitration isn't really the best way, we don't feel, to get to resolution of some of these conflicts, and we'd urge an unfavorable report.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Jones, and I'm here representing, pardon me, numerous land trusts throughout the state. I'm aware that this is a historic preservation easement issue and not necessarily a land preservation easement issue. But number one, we work together, and number two, the principles are basically the same. And I just want to lay out three quick reasons why arbitration does not work with a permanent conservation easement or a permanent easement of any kind. One of them is our good friends from the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. And many people who have an easement on their property get a small portion of the value back for what they have given up in exchange for a tax deduction. And that brings in all of the regulations of the IRS, who will basically say, if this easement is subject to arbitration, guys, it is no longer a permanent easement, because an arbitration process may decide, hey, we're not going to have this easement in existence anymore, or we are going to allow rights that were not allowed under the existing easement. The second reason is that as land trusts, as nonprofit entities, we cannot give what's called private benefit to an individual. And that means that we can't start a nonprofit and say, I'm going to give all of my money to my best friend for no good reason. And if you are going through arbitration, there is a very great chance that you will give private benefit to an individual, and land trusts cannot do that. And the third general reason is because we have an obligation to the original person who donates an easement or sells an easement. This is a very serious consideration that a family makes. And they say what they want that property to be going forward. Typically, what we are confronted with is a next generation of owners. They wish to do something different. Our responsibility is to the original donor. So thank you.
Questions for the Senator Elfman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Hughes, thank you for being here. I want to thank your agency for moving the application itself online. I think that's a great step towards transparency and accessibility, which I think is at the heart of the senator's bill. Are there lessons learned from this particular circumstance? Maybe might not be the right solution, but what other ways could MHT ensure greater transparency and accessibility, particularly to historically overburdened and underserved communities?
Well, I think in terms of the tax credit program, in this particular case, what we saw was we didn't have an opportunity to work with the applicant to provide technical assistance to get them to a place where they would be approvable. With grant programs, you have intent to apply deadlines so that you at least know what's coming in the door and you can work with applicants before you get to the full deadline. So that's certainly something we could consider with the tax credit program as a way to build in time to work with applicants to get to the point where you have an approvable project. They still have to compete, but at least you know it's going to meet the standards by that point.
And is that process public, somewhere on your website that say if you have questions or if you need technical assistance, here's an opportunity for it? Is that information public, or would you have to kind of be in the world of this work to know that that's an option for you?
I'll have to look and see. I don't have a good answer for you now, and I can get back to you. It is a 3-part application process where the part 1 application establishes, are you eligible because you have a property that's historic? But often the part 1 and part 2 come in together. So let me look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, other questions for these witnesses? Yes, Senator Benson.
Yeah, thank you very much. The heart of this bill is seeking arbitration. How do you, from what I'm hearing from you all, how do you describe the arbitrator? How would you describe an arbitrator?
So my understanding in the context of this bill, though the sponsor maybe could address this better than me, but our interpretation is that we would be looking to hire an arbitrator, a third party that we would be paying, and the other party would be paying to come in and go through a decision-making process. There'd be findings of fact and then a determination that would then guide our action going forward.
But there are certain characteristics that an arbitrator possesses that causes the arbitrator to rule on decisions in a nonpartisan and in a fair way. I'm just trying to figure out why there's such a problem with not having an arbitrator. I'm just trying to figure that out. Of course, I've negotiated contracts, a number of contracts, and when we got to a point where we couldn't agree, an arbitrator came in, but the arbitrator did not, he or she was not interested in either one of the sides. What they wanted was the information so that they could make an intelligent decision. I'm just trying to figure out why this is such a problem.
The way our interpretation was that the decision of the arbitrator would then compel the agency to award a grant or award a tax
That's not
credit.
the way an arbitrator works. Am I correct on this? Okay. I'm not sure that I would agree with that, because an arbitrator, the ones that we didn't even know the person. The person came in, heard both sides, and made a decision.
Yeah.
Looking at the facts of the case.
I can certainly take that back to our legal counsel who advised us on the nature of the bill and ask that question, so we're better informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that does it for this bill.
Thank you.
420.
All right. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the B&T Committee, Senator Antonio Hayes for the 40th District. This bill, however, a little bit more close and personal. I did have someone that was going to testify, but they mistakenly signed up in person instead of online. And so you're left with only me today. So I might take a little bit more time to cover some of the testimony that they might have shared. But just to give context, and I've shared this before, in the state of Maryland, we have 3 preferred providers. And so these preferred providers have a special designation in our Maryland Procurement Code that kind of give them a monopoly over services that's provided to state government. There's Maryland Works, there's Blind Industries, both of which serve a vulnerable population in our community that, if not for these 2 organizations, the vulnerable disability population probably wouldn't have the opportunities that they have. The third of these preferred providers is MCE, Maryland Correctional Enterprises. Maryland Correctional Enterprises actually use prison labor to make goods and services and provide them to state employees. The interesting thing about Maryland Correctional Enterprises, the federal government back in the 60s made it against the law to transport prison-made goods across state lines because of the exploitation of prisoners. Maryland's response, as well as many other state agencies, and I'll get in that in a minute, said, okay, well, it's against the law federally. We're going to do it intrastate, and we're going to force, in order to create a market, we're going to force every state agency to purchase from this organization, thereby creating MCE, which has successfully garnered a great deal of business, generating, close to $50 million a year, with those individuals who are performing the duties paying less than living wage. And the reason why is because our Constitution, the 13th Amendment, in abolishing slavery, made an exception for those who are in prison or who had committed a crime. And so we've essentially in Maryland have legalized modern day slavery using the exception that these are individuals that have created a crime. Interesting enough, the Associated Press just yesterday, right before my bill hearing, released a report that they've been conducting kind of like an investigation over the last 2 years of prison labor all over the country. And hopefully we've had an opportunity to share the article with you. After 2 years of research is pretty extensive, so I'm not going to share the whole article with you today, but I did highlight some things that they've highlighted in that article. And some of it reads, many of the companies buying directly from prisons are violating their own policies against the use of such labor, but it's completely legal, dating back largely to the need of labor to help rebuild South's shattered economy after the Civil War. Enshrined in the Constitution by the 13th Amendment, slavery and involuntary servitude are banned except as a punishment of crime. That clause is currently being challenged on the federal level, and efforts to remove similar language from state constitutions are expected to reach the ballot in about a dozen states this year. The number of people behind bars in the United States started to soar in the 1970s, just as Ingram entered the system, disproportionately hitting people of color. Now, with about 2 million people locked up, U.S. prison labor from all sectors have morphed into a multi-billion-dollar empire, extending far beyond the classic images of prison stamping license plate, working on crews and battling wildfires. Though almost every state has some kind of farming program, agriculture represents only a small fraction of overall prison workforce. Still, an analysis of data amassed by the Associated Press from correctional facilities nationwide traced nearly 200 million worth of sales on farm goods and livestock. I think last year I shared with you MCE over a period of time. We know them because we have to purchase furniture and other goods from them. What the AP found, although the federal government has banned, trafficking these goods across state lines, in some states, mostly in the South, what they've done in having prisoners work on farms and in agricultural environments, they will sell it to an in-state vendor or in-state broker. And then that broker then take the product that's made by this prison labor and then sell that to other states. In some cases, as you read the AP article, we're selling them to countries like China, where we and the UN have banned the import of their products like cotton. We're selling because of labor exploitation and prison made products, and we're selling to them, although the United States has banned it here. And so I say all that to say, I think we have an opportunity here to, really relook at how we are using prison-made labor, having that unique distinction in our procurement law that gives them a monopoly over providing goods and services is just not how I think that in a modern day society, we should be operating as a state, especially given the history in which this organization was lifted up. There's so many other ways. And this bill simply says that we're eliminating them as a preferred provider. It doesn't eliminate MCE. It still gives them the ability to compete in a marketplace, to continue to exist. It's simply saying there are certain designations in procurement. This organization, especially given its history and the way it operates and the return on the investment share the state, should not have a special designation to have a monopoly. And with that, Mr. Chairman and members of B&T, I ask for a favorable report for Senate Bill 420.
Senator, questions for Senator Hayes? Yes?
Yeah, I got a quick one, Senator. You drew the analogy to slavery. Are inmates required to work in Maryland Correctional Enterprises, or do they do it voluntarily?
Some of them do it voluntarily, but the reference that I made to slavery is very, very precise. The United States Constitution, the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, says that slavery is abolished with one exception, and that is for people who are being punished for serving a crime. And so thereby that one exception to our United States Constitution thereby legalized slavery here in this country. That's the reference that I made to slavery.
Right, and that's what got my attention. But when I'm trying to relate that to Maryland Correctional Enterprises, are the people who work there working there involuntarily?
Well, that's an interesting way to phrase it. So some of them have an opportunity to do it. Some of them, because they're not free to go about in the community. Their living situation definitely isn't voluntary, but is as a result of creating a crime. Also, the other protections that are afforded to the average American in the workplace, whether it's filing a complaint for unfair labor practices or other things, aren't afforded to these individuals. And so you may say that they volunteer to take on this opportunity to work in this job or whatever, but if they were in any other job other than being in a prison provided employment opportunity, they would have other protections that are not afforded to them if they are in prison.
I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, is the department testifying? No. Okay. All right. No one here. Thank you. Senator, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stallings.
Thank you, Senator. Just for reference, I know there's like other skilled trades that are like part of that system. We're not referring to those so they can get a skill to move forward back after their incarceration.
It's funny. That's one of the arguments that you will hear from correction officials and other folks. We need MCE because it creates skills for people to re-enter the community. The fact of the matter is it does create skills for many of these individuals. Many of them won't be employable even with the skills that they have because they have a criminal record. But then in addition to that, the false narrative and the fake narrative that this provide is many of the individuals that's participating in these programs have a life sentence. And so as a labor practice, it makes sense because you have a predictable workforce that's going to keep coming to work for the next 20 years because they're not going anywhere. But as a humane practice, again, going back to the reference of, in servitude, it's a similar situation. So what brought this to my attention was me actually reaching out to MCE, learning that they manufacture clothing asking, there was a manufacturer in my district that wanted to hire people that return to the community. And I was not met with a favorable thing. And so one would assume, and many people will argue, that it creates opportunities. And so we're not saying get rid of them. For those purposes, this bill does not ask to get rid of MCE, right?
Right.
The profits in which they make exceed millions and millions of dollars. And so all we're saying, given the history, given the exploitation of these people who are incarcerated, why should we continue to afford them make margins that are so vast?
And I understand that. Because I believe in second chances, and my job is my other job is we hire people to give them second chances, to give them a good job. And that's all I would want. If it's an opportunity and for a skill to get a good job for their future and benefit them, I think it's a great thing. But to use it against them is not a good thing for anybody. I don't care who you are, but I agree. But thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this may be an appropriate question for the agency, but when I look at the fiscal note, it talks about 1,100 plus individuals in the situation that you're talking about. It talks about 2.2 or 51 million, and it talks about $180 per month to these individuals that work on average from that standpoint. Do you know what wage that these people you're talking about make? So every year they do an annual report, again, to the point of the 13th Amendment. Because of that exemption, they're not bound by providing the minimum wage. So on average, the average inmate is paid anywhere from like 40 cents to $1 and some change a day. They're not paid on an hourly basis. It's usually a very minimum amount that they're paid a day for their services. Thank you. I think that supports some of the comments that we were hearing, or some of the questions when you talk about involuntary. Like 40 cents isn't a lot of money, and $180 a month isn't a lot of money. So I hear you very loud and clear. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much, Senator. Senator McKay, 407.
Yes, sir. May I bring my witness up, sir?
Please.
Thank you, sir. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, esteemed members of Budget and Tax. For the record, Senator Mike McKay presenting Senate Bill 407, Community Colleges Capital Project State Share Adjustment. Just a couple of different bullet points here. This is a bill that you heard last year. So the names have not been changed to protect them. The numbers have not been changed. Everything is exactly the same. It just didn't get an opportunity to have your blessing out of this great committee. So really what this does is it adjusts the formula for community colleges, capital project, state share. This is similar to legislation that we passed out in the Senate a couple of years ago when it came to K through 12 funding for capital projects. This is supported by the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, Garrett County Commissioners, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. It's important to understand that this will not increase any of the state share. So we're not asking for any more money. All we are asking for is the ability that if a county is adjacent to a county that is unfortunately in more economic poverty, such as Allegheny County, the county of Garrett County would be able to use their funding. And so if impacted in 2026, the projects, it would permit Garrett College to obtain a 67.9 state share. Again, fiscal note is manageable, no new funding, no one is in opposition, and it would be really, really nice if you would give us a favorable vote on Senate Bill 407. Dr. Midcath is here from Garrett County College, who will be able to share more of the technical instead of just the eye candy trying to sell you on this particular bill. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Be nice.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. I am, for the record, Dr. Richard Midcap, president of Garrett College. I appreciate the opportunity to share my support for SB 407, which provides a vehicle to reduce the local share for community college capital projects for counties in the bottom quartile of median household income. Single county community colleges must currently pay 50% of the funding for capital projects. This bill would allow those counties in the bottom quartile of median household income to have their share reduced to equal the local share of the adjacent county that is less than but closest to 50%. I strongly support SB 407 because of the dramatic impact it would have on Garrett College's ability to undertake capital projects. Our current 50% local share is an extremely heavy lift for Garrett County government. We are by far the smallest jurisdiction in the state with a single county supporting a community college with just 29,000 residents. As a frame of reference, the next smallest counties supporting a community college are Allegheny County with approximately 71,000 residents and Cecil County with approximately 100,000. This change, if implemented for FY26, as Senator McKay noted, would allow Garrett College to employ the same 67.9% state share as neighboring Allegheny County. Such a change would significantly improve our prospects for future capital projects. If this adjustment for future capital projects is made, as an example, on a $15 million capital project, Garrett County's share would drop from 7.5 million to 5 million. This could literally mean the difference between us moving forward our next capital project or having to delay it. I am pleased to announce that the Maryland Association of Community College Council of Presidents unanimously endorsed their support of this bill. Thank you for providing this opportunity for me to speak in favor of SB 407.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. So the way the bill's drafted, does it just affect what counties would be I don't know if the word's impacted, but what counties would be affected? I know Garrett.
Yes,
What else?
honestly, at this point, the only single county supporting a community college that is in the bottom quartile is Garrett.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, only because one of the support letters that was received only referenced Garrett. So I just wanted to get clarification on that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
And if I may, Senator, there again, the legislation that was passed a couple years ago from Senator Edwards on K through 12 funding, that was the exact blueprint that we followed. And so, yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brad Phillips, Executive Director of MAC, and I promise I will keep this very short. We support this legislation. This would allow Garrett College to be on par with the other matching entities like the libraries and the school system in their county for capital funding. We want them to have the same opportunity to have the instructional space and facilities that they need in order to grow the workforce needs there in Garrett County, and we urge a favorable report. You have my written testimony, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. Any questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you. The next bill is Senate Bill 430, Senator Washington.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. Senator Washington here, happy to present Senate Bill 430, Community Health and Safety Works Grant Program and Fund established. This is a bill that this committee passed last year without an appropriation, but it didn't receive a vote in the House. So I am asking that you pass the bill with the appropriation. The program codifies an existing program that is funded at the level that I am requesting again. It's been funded at this level for the last 3 years. And what this bill also does is that it expands eligible projects to include those projects that address both public safety, but also environmental health, and allows for there to be environmental architectural design strategies used to address public safety. The goal and the purpose of the grant program is, of course, to improve the quality of life and the economic potential of communities. I've been in communication with DHCD on this. I know that you've gotten a lot of legislation from agencies. Some of those pieces of legislation are very similar to some of the pieces of legislation that all of us are putting in as well. But this is a case where I've been in communication with the agency. And there will be, and I don't know if you have the amendments, but based on my discussions with the agency, there are some amendments that I'm proposing to the committee. One of them would be looking at the 3 sort of headings is community placemaking, environmental health, and environmental justice. Getting rid of the levels. We have like 75,000, 25, just getting rid of those levels, allowing the agency to have more flexibility in its funding of different projects. Also supporting technical assistance for community health and safety. We know that there are a lot of organizations around that maybe they're just at the edge of being able to do something, but they don't have the capacity at the moment to actually write for a grant or to manage a grant. And so this would actually allow for an organization to ask DHCD, can you help us figure out how we can best move this along. The additional amendments that we have requested would remove the requirement that the community demonstrate evidence of partnership with law enforcement. It doesn't remove it entirely. What some of the communities have experienced is that they've attempted to enter into these contracts, but they haven't gotten any reaction. Again, law enforcement has lots that they're working on, responding to a grant request. Responding to a letter request to engage in a partnership might not be top priority, but the community association or the entity has to show that they've made an attempt. In other words, they should show that they've sent the letter, that it is their intention to partner. But we've had some that organizations not be able to qualify because they weren't able to demonstrate that. Again, I want to address the Department of Budget's letter. One of the things that they say is that it's requesting funding in perpetuity. That is not correct. This legislation requests that there just be funding for FY 25, which is actually, it's already in the budget, and 26, 27, and 28. So it's allowing, and you'll hear that, it will allow for some organizations to prepare themselves to be able to apply in the future. And also if some of the organizations have projects that might last more than a year, and they could actually do 2-year approvals, it will allow the department to or if somebody has a 3-year project, that the department would in fact be able to approve that type of legislation. And so that, again, is my request, that you vote favorably with the appropriation and the amendments that you will receive. And like you to hear, she was also here last year to testify, and she will be here again. And then also, I believe I have someone online from Baltimore City Housing Department as well, who is leading up our middle neighborhood strategy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all again. Thank you for passing it last year. And so I'm here again to ask for the same thing and to put the appropriations through, and that it is renewable so that we know that we can access this funding for several years. My name is Dr. Kyla Liggett-Creel, and I'm a social worker in Baltimore City. I've been working in Baltimore City for about 24 years, specifically around issues of trauma, community violence, and mental health. My program has received funding from the Department of Housing and Community Development to engage in violence prevention work on the streets of Baltimore. I wanted to take a few moments to share some of our outcomes so that you can see for yourself what this money achieves. Our Community Violence Intervention Prevention Program is a multidisciplinary collaborative approach that includes returning citizens, credible messengers, social workers, peer recovery specialists, police officers, and lawyers. We build relationships in the community, and credible messengers provide conflict mediation to prevent violence. The social workers and case managers provide support such as employment assistance, obtaining vital records, and accessing drug treatment. The lawyers help with expungement. Our work takes place on the west side of Baltimore City, specifically in Upton Druid Heights and Utah Street. The first 6 months of this year, when we just started, there were 6 murders on the street where we work. During those 6 months, if you don't take any other numbers with you today, the first 6 months, there were 6 murders. Because of the funding that we were able to get, we were able to put 22 returning citizens, credible messengers, on the corners and build relationships. There was on average 25 open drug sales happening on Utah Street when we started. Because of the funding that you all have given and allowed us to access, we have been able to say in the past 6 months, there have been 0 murders. I ask that you approve this and give the money for years to come. Thank you.
Senator Roosevelt has a question.
No, I didn't. I thought I was
Oh.
calling a witness. Go ahead. You
Oh.
go ahead.
Give him the gavel for a minute, you know. Is this Mr. Pipick?
Yeah, Bob Pipick, yeah.
Pipick?
Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Bob Pipick, and I'm the President and CEO of Healthy Neighborhoods, Inc., and I'm testifying in support of SB 430. Healthy Neighborhoods is a community development intermediary supporting Baltimore City neighborhoods with a combination of capital and community investment. We work with and through 16 on-the-ground neighborhood-based nonprofit partners to build wealth for residents through increasing housing value and engage communities to improve social cohesion in those neighborhoods. H&I has been both a direct grantee of this program and has seen firsthand as an intermediary among our many partners the benefits that it's brought to neighborhoods in the city. Our work is primarily in what could be categorized as your kind of middle neighborhoods, working class, middle class neighborhoods, and places such as Bella Edison, Coldstream, Homestead Montebello, Greater Baybrook, and Garwin Oaks. We're all able, as well as Heritage Crossing through our work, we're all able to invest in lighting and cameras and a range of safety-related issues through this program, and it has had direct positive impacts on how their safety and security of their neighborhoods, which is a big piece of the puzzle as we all try to work holistically to improve these communities in the city. I want to thank Senator Washington for bringing this forward and the committee for taking the time to consider the issue and urge you to move forward favorably with SB 430 to the full General Assembly. I also will toss in here that we're very appreciative of the work of the Assembly in supporting neighborhood revitalization grant program and programs like this, as they're just critical components of the infrastructure here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could just quickly, I kept my panel short, but I didn't want to leave the impression that it's only Baltimore City. Howard County, Humanum Inc. received $25,000. St. Mary's County Community Development Corporation received $11,000 for facility improvements. Worcester County, Town of Ocean City received $50,000, and the Town of Snow Hill received $79,000. Prince George's, the city of Hyattsville was awarded $95,000, and the Town of Cottage City received $94,000. In Allegheny County, Cumberland Economic Development Corporation received $50,000 for business district revitalization. And Anne Arundel County Downtown Annapolis Partnership received 87,000, and Rebuilding Together Annapolis received 95,000 for affordable housing. Montgomery County, Cecil, every single jurisdiction in the state of Maryland has benefited, and multiple small organizations have received anywhere between 25,000 to 100,000 to do their part. So thank you. I'm here to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Senator. Questions? Senator Solly?
Thank you, Senator, for bringing this. You were saying that they were capital and community or private funds that they work. Is that like a 50-50 or 60-40?
No, these are grants. They're grants. These are straight up grants for, and then there's these areas, either they can do community placemaking, but there's also a public safety component of it. And so it's allowing communities to decide what's the best way to make their communities more environmentally healthy, but also from a public health perspective. I wanted to make sure that the public safety component stayed into the grant program because I think it's really important to do both.
No, I see it's working well and I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anything else? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
414. Senator Zucker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, distinguished members of the Budget and Taxation Committee. For the record, Senator Craig Zucker here to support Senate Bill 414. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, given that there's no opposition to this bill and a great expert panel, I will be brief, not too brief. But look, I think this committee more than any other in the Senate understands the importance of fiscal responsibility. And that really starts, it should start at a young age. And that's why the Maryland Council on Economic Education has been playing such a vital role for more than 70 years. And I believe that the wisdom of this committee and the General Assembly recognize that by approving last year $200,000 in funding to make sure that they're providing assistance to students and educators across the state of Maryland, with understanding the importance of financial literacy and providing resources to educators and students, and making sure that we have the best and brightest students understanding personal responsibility around finance. And Mr. Chairman and colleagues, we always want to track on the fiscal committee sort of how the money's being spent and if it's being utilized. And I'm just really proud of the great work that this organization has done with providing assistance to more than 2,100 educators and providing educational services to more than 200,000 students. So this bill keeps it going. There's already staff support there, and we want to make sure that this program keeps going and making sure that the fiscal leaders of the future are not only future members of the Senate or the General Assembly, but the ones also helping to advise us. So with that, you know, I do want to also commend Ms. Weaver on her outstanding dedication and the entire team over there. And with that, I'll turn it over to the panel. Happy to answer any questions too, but
Thank you, Senator Zucker, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Julie Weaver, and I am the Executive Director of the Maryland Council on Economic Education, a role I assumed about 5 years ago. We are a nonprofit organization focused on supporting economics and personal finance education in K through 12 schools. Our work involves partnering with MSDE, school systems throughout the state, and individual teachers to provide consulting on curriculum and course design, offering professional development courses and workshops for teachers, creating and curating classroom resources, and offering programs that engage students in learning. These include the stock market game and the personal finance challenge competition and more. From its inception 70 years ago, the bulk of the programmatic support for our work comes from the business and philanthropic community. However, this funding can be unpredictable, and it makes staffing the organization challenging. The need for our resources is growing as more counties are embracing adding personal finance and economics to their curriculums. So they are calling on us more and more for help. And we want to be there to provide that help. But in order to do so, we need to grow our staff. In the past 7 years, as Senator Zucker mentioned, we've had tremendous impact. Nearly 15,000 teachers attended our courses and integrated their programs and resources into their classrooms. Our student impact last year alone was 228,000, contributing to an estimated total of 6 million students since our inception in 1953. This, I believe, is a testament to the return on the state's investment in us. As the state is investing billions of dollars in ensuring students are college and career ready, we believe that being financially prepared for college and career is also important, and we urge you to be supportive of this bill. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Archana Panada. I'm a senior at Marys Ridge High School and will be attending the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business this fall. My first exposure to financial literacy occurred through my school's chapter of the Millionaires Club, an after-school club for students interested in business, finance, and economics. Through this club, I was first exposed to the Maryland Council on Economic Education's programs, including the stock market game and the National Personal Finance Challenge. Through these programs, I first became aware of how unprepared I was to manage my finances as I entered the world of adulthood. I know many of my peers feel the same way, as our school systems often prioritize learning about complex math and science topics over teaching us how to file our taxes or simply write a check. Throughout high school, I've made it my mission to decrease the stigma around personal finances, and the MCEE's initiatives have provided the perfect outlet for me to do so. As president of my high school's Millionaires Club, I've had the opportunity to participate in and expose countless individuals to the multifaceted realm of investing without having to worry about the risk of legitimate capital losses through the stock market game. Furthermore, as a member of the Maryland State Champion National Personal Finance Challenge team earlier this year, I've enthralled myself in the realm of financial wellness as I've explored how macroeconomic principles, our nation's history, and news media headlines can influence how individuals manage their day-to-day finances. These programs have instilled both the necessary knowledge and a sense of confidence within me that I assure will be of use to me in college and beyond as I enter the world of work. Decreased financial literacy rates across not only the state, but also the nation are an epidemic that the MCE's diligent efforts aid in mitigating through their immersive initiatives that better equip both teachers and students to tackle tangible concerns associated with confidently managing finances. The MCEE provides students with opportunities that no classroom environment can offer. It offers a safety net as students experiment with budgeting, saving, and investing, among other pertinent topics, without having to worry about dwindling finances. Thank you.
Tell me about that. What was that team?
Sorry?
The team, the national?
Oh, yeah. So I was on the Maryland State Champion National Personal Finance Challenge team this last spring.
What's that all about?
So basically it starts with it's a test and a case study component. The first part is a test. So students and teams all across the state test on their topics, their personal finance topics. So on investing, budgeting, credit, and debit, those are some of the topics that show up on the test. And it's 40 questions. Yeah, 40 questions and 45 minutes. And the top 6 scoring teams then move on to the case study round. And in this round, they're given a real life scenario on a fictional family who may have issues with their personal finances, and we're asked to essentially solve their problems through creating a budget and looking at their income statements and financials in order to mitigate their financial burdens. And then from there, the top teams are ranked and go to the quiz bowl round, in which we again answer questions on personal finances.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Great job.
If I can add, our state champion team, this is a program we run at the council. Our
Yeah.
state champion team then goes on to compete against the other state champions for the national championship. And Archana and her team did extremely well at nationals last year. We're really proud of them.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Bestranson, and I'm currently the coordinator of the financial education program for Prince George's County Public Schools. Prior to getting this position, I was in Prince George's County Public School classrooms for 35 years. I'm here to speak in favor of Bill 414 to provide the council with additional funding. I'm here to represent those thousands of teachers that have been mentioned before, and what an impact it can have on their careers and on their lives. And I'll use myself as an example. So like so many before me, I had to learn about handling my money the hard way. As a new high school teacher 25 years ago, I was assigned to teach the financial literacy class in my school and had no background in it. I needed graduate credits and found financial literacy courses at Towson State University, which connected me to the Council on Economic Education, and things opened up for me. I've utilized the many programs and resources available from MCE throughout my teaching career. One of the most profound programs that I participated in was the Maryland Teachers Summit, where teachers from all over the state gather to network and share great best practices in teaching economics and personal finance. The wonderful thing about these programs, as we've heard already, the programs enrich the financial literacy curriculums that we are currently teaching. It provides real life experience and real life application to the students, and they can see the why of what we are teaching. We have so many new teachers who are brand new to this content and brand new to teaching, and they need these resources. The numbers of teachers who need MCE is growing by the year. So it is really of utmost importance that they be able to reach those teachers with all the materials and resources that are there. So I encourage you to pass Bill 414. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Evan Richards. I'm the Senior Policy and Political Strategist with the Maryland Bankers Association. And we're in strong support of Senate Bill 414. This is our major legislative priority every year, is increasing financial education. Bank employees too often see customers come in at a point where it's too late to help them with their finances. Increasing this education is important, and banks across state actually partner with the council. They do provide them that much needed funding every single year. And on a personal note, I was a recipient of this education, and it was more than just an education to me. It was life changing. That at the time I was receiving this, you're talking about 2008, 2009, during the Great Recession. At the same time, my dad lost his job. We had pretty reduced income, and my parents didn't have these financial skills. So I'm learning these skills in school, and I'm taking them home and helping my parents implement them as a 16-year-old. And, at that point, it sets me up for a successful future. That investment was critical. And I have to say, and I'll end with this, I'll be brief, that I was also a member of a personal finance challenge team who won the state championship back in 2011. And during that, we got together for, I had a little banquet every year. And there was one of your colleagues got up and spoke. And I had the chance to talk to her afterwards. And she always said, if I can ever do anything for you, give me a call. 4 years later, she offered me a job. And I worked here for 6.5 years. With that, Senate Bill 414, more than just financial education, was life-changing for me. And I urge the committee to, provide MCE this much needed funding. Thank you.
Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Rory Murray here on behalf of the Maryland Council on Economic Education and the Maryland DC Credit Union Association. I'm mostly here for moral support and to give an emphatic me too. I'll add two things. One, in your packet, there are 17 letters of support from organizations and individuals all over the state. The second thing is, in the interim, I would ask any of you that want to come see their offices to come, because what's truly amazing about Julie and her team is a small staff in a small office with a massive reach. So when the state is looking for getting the best bang out of their buck, the most ROI possible, this is a relatively small ask that can have a major impact. So ask for a favorable report.
Any questions for the panel? Song?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've always said this, it's good to have in our schools, our students to know a budget. It just makes sense. It's wise for them to know and to get wisdom to know what they have and how they could balance that out. And this is I believe this is a really good thing that you're doing. And I appreciate it. And the challenges, which I know they're pretty good. They're pretty awesome. And you learn from that. So I want to thank the sponsor and the senator for this good bill, because I think all of our schools, this is something that they should have there. And I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Was there anyone else? I had Mr. Anton on here, but I assume you're with him.
He had to run across the street, so we saved you the headache.
Appreciate that. All right, thank you, Senator. Senator Alford. 440. Like this one's been
Thank you,
around.
Mr. Chair. I have a couple of panel members, if that's okay.
Sure.
I will be brief. Senator Sarah Elfreth, representing District 30, here to present Senate Bill 440. This is an issue area and a bill this committee has seen a few times. Mr. Chair, we took your penchant for work group seriously over the interim and formed a little informal work group on deer management. And I want to thank Senator Bailey in particular for being a part of that. We met twice, a group of senators, delegates, Department of Agriculture and Department of Natural Resources, to come up with our best options for mitigating a large population of deer across the state. This is just one tool that you will see come forward this year. Informally, Department of Agriculture and DNR are forming a partnership, which is really exciting, pairing hunters with farmers. So we're going to try to attack this from multiple levels, but Senate Bill 440 just reinstitutes a tax credit program that was part of state law from 2018 to 2021. It lapsed in 2023. Simple idea, a hunter gets a deer, wants to donate that venison to a food bank, but the processing fees are pretty high to do that. This simply helps offset those processing fees. Now, we've increased the per deer amount because the cost of processing has gone up, for folks who might know that. But this is a really important program. The last year that it was implemented in 2022, it took in more than 5,000 deer off of our roads, off of our farms, off of the flower beds and your constituents' neighborhoods that we get complaints about all the time. Simply put, Mr. Chair, it increases from $50 to $75 per deer, the tax credit, and then increases the overall to $300 that you're eligible for. The fiscal note is a little high, but I just remind the committee that the cost of overpopulation of deer is also very high, both to our farmers that you'll hear about. Proud to have a Farm Bureau here. Estimated $60 million a year in crop loss to deer. And it also will be helpful to our constituents on the road, because this is a shocking number, but between DNR and State Farm, they estimate that between 30,000 and 35,000 car accidents are caused every year by deer. So for us to get 5,000 deer, again, off the road, off our farmland, out of our communities at a relatively low cost, I think it's a pretty good deal for the state. Again, this is not a panacea. It is one piece of an important puzzle to make sure we're mitigating our deer population. And I ask for a favorable committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. My name is Tyler Huff. I am the Director of Government Relations for the Maryland Farm Bureau. I am here today to speak in favor of Senate Bill 440 on behalf of the 9,500 member families of the Maryland Farm Bureau. Crop damage is a true issue for farmers throughout Maryland. As you heard Senator Elfreth say, farmers face up to $60 million a year in wildlife damage just accrued to loss of crop. And in an industry that deals with tight margins as it is, an ever-changing and fluctuating market, every single bit that is lost from a financial standpoint makes it that much more difficult to keep farmers in business and in practice. Roughly of that 60 million, that's only 77% of the damage that our farmers ultimately face is equated to deer. Ultimately, supporting programs like Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry with an income tax donation to help with the expensive cost of processing and the few processors that are actually available for deer in the state. Also, while putting that venison to a good use to make sure that we are feeding all of those in the state. I will be brief, and I appreciate your time and urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 440 on behalf of the members of the Maryland Farm Bureau. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Paul Pedito. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Land Resources at the Department of Natural Resources. Pleased to be here in support of SB 440. I'll be brief. What I will say is, so the senator mentioned this makes arguably a small technical change, raising the tax credit from $50 to $75. What it does in practice, though, is it affords the hunter who is successful in taking one or maybe two deer sort of the incentive to continue to go back out there. So those first one or two deer are in their freezer or friends and family. Now they have the opportunity to go back and take additional deer. We have very liberal seasons and bag limits in Maryland. Sometimes the barrier is, to me as a hunter, do I have the capacity to go back out and take another one, and what do I do with it? What the bill does is gives me the capacity to go out and take that next year or two or three more, and closes the gap between how much it's going to cost me to have that animal processed and ultimately donated to what it's going to cost me in the end. So typically about $100 to have that animal processed. Now I get $50 back. The bill affords me a $75 tax credit. Again, it's not a full reimbursement, but it's a significant incentive that will we know, recognizing how hunters sort of operate, will get them back out in the field. We need them in the field because that is the most significant tool we have to manage the deer population and all the attendant problems that the Senator and Mr. Huff mentioned. So we urge your favorable support.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jeremy Parks. I'm a resident of Anne Arundel County and a member of the Wildlife Advisory Commission and an avid hunter. I'm here to support Senate Bill 440 and urge the committee to move it favorably. Deer processing costs have risen dramatically in the recent years, as everyone can imagine. And a typical deer that I take to a processor now costs me $100, used to cost me about $50, and that was probably 2 years ago. While I can afford to go out and pay the $100 and donate the processed deer, that ultimately there are plenty of people that cannot. And that's who I'm here to speak for, the people that without the tax credit aren't going to be able to financially make this work in their model. For those who can afford to cover the cost, it's great because we can then take the monies and donate it towards other areas and continue supporting groups, including peoples and organizations who are standing up, teaching the next generation of hunters and outdoor stewards. These are the same people who will be responsible for helping manage our deer population and underwrite the funding that support all wildlife management and conservation in Maryland. Thank you for your time and look forward to a positive and favorable response.
Quick question. Great bill, great idea. And I know some hunters that even $100 is tough for them, and they're gonna have to wait $75. Have we looked at possibly offering this also to the processing plant to say, hey, hunter brings a deer in, you can say, look, if you want, leave it with us, we'll process it, we'll donate it. And the company, XYZ processing would get that $75.
Yeah,
only one can get it, either the individual or the processing facility, but at least it gives, because you're gonna have to wait a year to get this money back when you do your taxes. And these processors deal with several hundred deer where they can say, you know what, just leave it here, we'll take care of it. And they've got the freezer, they can donate it and get a bigger check.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation we could have. Obviously, the comptroller has a stake in this, and I don't know how that works in terms of the implications on the budget side. This is pretty easily tracked. It's an individual tax credit. But that's a conversation worth having.
That's an interesting idea, Senator. And the reason it's a tax credit, which I don't love either, because you have to wait the whole year, is because we can't have it as a bounty. We discussed in this committee a couple of times making it a grant, but if that would make it a bounty in which the federal government would have a problem and we put it at risk.
I understand that. I just think for an individual, $75 isn't much.
Yeah, that's fair.
But for a processing, butcher, he could have several where, and he's got the facility to store them. I just think it might make it more viable.
Yeah. Let me kick it around with the assistant secretary and come back to the committee.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Muse, 446. You brought a familiar face to me.
Yes.
I was scratching my head when I first saw you back there, Alex. I was like, why are you here?
Well, that takes care of half the problem. Then no, I'm just kidding. Thank you all very much, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. For the record, I'm C. Anthony Muse, Senator 26th Legislative District. And this is the bill, it's a simple bill. You've had it before you and passed it out before. I have one expert witness, as you've just mentioned just now, Alex, and everyone knows him. He also served on the 2005 task force, by the way, on common ownership communities, which studied the issues pertinent to common ownership communities, et cetera. And that's really what this bill is about. SB 446 is enabling legislation. Let me keep that in front of us. It's enabling legislation that would allow counties and municipalities at their discretion to establish a local trust fund for the purpose of repairing and rehabilitating infrastructure within communities. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have a lot of testimonies today. This is not a bill you had before. I'm getting it mixed up. So for the record, you can just strike that if you would. And so if and when the local government or a municipality decides to establish a fund, because that's what this does, establish the fund, it must consist of the following: property tax revenues paid to the county or municipality by the unit owners. And number two, other appropriations made by the county or the municipality by their own, or rather for the benefit of the fund. And then gifts or donations made to the fund and investment earning of the fund. Additionally, the county or municipality can establish eligibility requirements for condominiums and HOAs to receive funds. And the county or municipality must prioritize condominium and HOAs that exhibit the greatest need for the infrastructure. It's basically a bill that says that will take the burden off of local communities like condominiums. When it comes to infrastructure, roads, sewage, you get two problems. You get one, developers, sometimes they have moved on and they came and they said, oh, your money will take care of this infrastructure. Then you get another one who says, no, it's not my problem. It's another owner who says it's a problem of the county government. County government says it's on the HOA or condominium. What this does is to establish a fund that a county or municipality may say. They can say yes to it or no. And this money from their taxes will go into that fund that will come back to help with that infrastructure. That infrastructure is extremely expensive. We all know that. It's impacting mostly the seniors who live in these places. They can't raise the fees on the residents because it takes a 66 2/3, which you'll never get together. And of course, they'll never say, yes, raise it. However, I think they are tax-paying citizens. They're entitled to having their roads and some infrastructure like sewage, et cetera, done by the county in which they pay their taxes so that it doesn't appear that they are double taxed twice. That's all this bill does. And I'm going to turn it over now to our expert here.
Thank you, Senator Muse, and good afternoon. My name is Alex Hakimian. I live in Columbia, Maryland, and I'm a president of my townhouse association in Maryland, in Columbia, Maryland. And I want to add my voice to wholeheartedly support this bill because there's a desperate situation out there amongst a lot of homeowners associations and condominium associations. This bill will finally correct some of the longstanding problems that have occurred recently. And they're being faced every year by homeowners associations. The fact that they just don't have enough money to take care of their very expensive infrastructure repairs. And there's also this serious inequity of some homeowners associations having to pay the entire cost of the infrastructure repairs, while other homeowner associations don't have to pay a dime. And those that do have to pay, not only have to pay through their assessment to the homeowners association, but they also pay property taxes to the county. And a portion of those property taxes actually benefit those other homeowners associations that don't have to pay a dime, because their roads are considered, or their stormwater facilities are considered public rather than private. In my particular association, the developer that originally created my community negotiated with the county to declare that our roads would be private roads. And because they're private roads, we're completely, as an association, responsible for paying the freight. So I want to add my voice, and I want to thank Senator Muse for introducing this bill before this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? All right. Good to see you both.
I think his presence, you all were very light on me because he's here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I heard the favorable reporting. Thank you.
Thank you. 498, Senator Gall.
Yeah, all right.
You got some other, I got 4. You
Yeah.
others?
From NARF, I have Tammy. Yeah.
Oh, there is.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay, great. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. SB 498 would modestly increase existing senior tax credit for seniors on the lower and middle part of the income distribution. By way of background, one of the issues that I hear most from my constituents is the tax burden on our seniors, which can make it difficult to pay for essentials and to enjoy retirement. To take this issue seriously, I am proud to have introduced this bill, which would expand the senior tax credit in our state. As detailed in the fiscal note, the existing senior tax credit is $1,000 for single seniors not making more than $100,000 per year, with some constraints placed on seniors making between $50,000 but no more than $100,000 in the event of falling revenues in a given year. Joint filers, surviving spouses, and heads of household who make no more than $150,000 per year are eligible for $1,750 credit with similar fiscal constraints in place. SB 498 would increase the credit for single seniors making up to $75,000 per year to $1,250. Seniors making more than $75,000 but not more than $100,000 would continue to receive the original $1,000 credit. Similarly, the credit for joint filers, surviving spouses, and heads of household would increase to $2,000 for those making up to $125,000. For those seniors making more than $125,000 but not more than $150,000, the credit would continue to be $1,750. Put simply, SB 498 would increase the senior tax credit to the seniors in our communities that need it the most. For others currently eligible, the credit would still stay the same. To keep pace with inflation and to maintain Maryland's edge in retaining and retirees in our state, this tax credit needs to be increased. Per the fiscal note, SB 498 is projected to have a cost of $20 million in fiscal year 2025. Obviously, I'm aware of the more difficult fiscal environment that we're in. To pass a balanced budget, though, tough decisions to be made about which to pass. Compared to other tax relief bills, the fiscal impact of this bill, I think, is relatively modest. And it's my hope that the committee will be able to provide some additional tax relief to Maryland seniors. And therefore, I respectfully request a favorable report on SB 498. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. My name is Tammy Bresnahan. I am the Senior Director of Advocacy for AARP Maryland. We represent over 850,000 members across the state. Key priorities of the organization include helping older Marylanders achieve financial and health security and helping them to keep as much of their retirement savings as possible. You have my written testimony, but I'll just be brief. I think Senator Gall put it best. We hear all the time, and I'm sure you all do too, from all your retirees. The rising cost of essential necessities, including groceries, utilities, and prescription drugs, is one of the significant concern for millions of Marylanders, especially for older and retired Marylanders. A study in 2017, before inflation hit, 22% of Marylanders residents stopped taking medication as prescribed due to rising cost. Older Marylanders on fixed incomes clearly feel the effects of inflation more than the rest of us because they don't have any other way to make money. Maryland retirees currently pay federal income tax as well as significant state and local income taxes, motor fuel, sales, property taxes, which are not included in the fiscal impact. A vast number of older Marylanders also support their grandchildren and the well-being of their children, as well as act as primary caregivers. They also feel that they have limited options for rejoining the workforce the older they get, virtually no time horizon to increase the savings. Reducing taxes on retirement income will provide Marylander retirees with extra dollars to care for their loved ones and to have a little bit of extra funds. ARP Maryland looks forward to working with all of you in enacting and implementing policies like Senate Bill 498 that preserve and support their economic engine within the state and help to ensure that all Marylanders can live their retirement years with dignity and independence. We thank Senator Gall for bringing this legislation. We ask for a favorable report on 498.
Thank you. We have some other witnesses here. Did you have more?
Right. Mr. or Dr. Goldberg that's there with us, he's actually on my panel that's there remotely, if it's okay. Majority
Well, we have Zoe Gallagher here, not here. Paula Sundell. We'll do that first and then we'll do the virtual.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman Gazone and members of the B&T Committee. My name is Robert Goldberg.
No, but
I serve on the Maryland State Legislative Committee of NARF, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. We represent approximately 300,000 federal employees and annuitants living in Maryland. For the benefit of all Maryland seniors, we support SB 498 introduced by Senator Giles. Maryland has one of the highest costs of living and state income taxes in the nation. This discourages aging in place in Maryland and encourages migration to senior-friendly states. Many other states actively recruit seniors with tax incentives because they recognize the value of seniors as economic engines for job and revenue generation. Thus, 9 states do not have any state income tax, and 14 states, including some of the most progressive in our nation, exempt all or part of federal pensions from state and local taxes. The data in our written testimony shows the economic cost when seniors migrate. There's a loss of economic activity, loss of federal grants, and of course, the loss of any taxes paid by the seniors who have migrated. Critics of tax relief for seniors argue that Maryland cannot compete with Florida's weather, but a very substantial number of Maryland seniors are also moving to Florida, Delaware, and Florida, and Pennsylvania, rather. In addition to serving as engines of economic growth, seniors are also a major source of volunteers and do not have children in school. Keeping seniors here keeps our economy healthy, and this matter is completely ignored in the fiscal note. Reducing senior migration is in everyone's interest. We thank Senator Giles for introducing this important legislation, and NARF is delighted to support it and request that it be approved by this committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sundell.
I am very happy to have a chance to speak to the committee, and your work is very important. I'd like to introduce myself before I go and start. I'm a retired federal macro economist that lives in Maryland, and I've been a registered Democrat my entire life. I vote strongly Democratic on the national level, but Maryland has become and is a very high spending state, very high taxes. Kiplinger rates the tax burden of Maryland the sixth highest for middle income taxpayers. So I believe we need pragmatic solutions that look at the facts and not standard party positions. And I admire pragmatic politicians that look at the facts and not standard party positions. I think it's a win-win if Maryland can keep more of its seniors in the state. The vast majority of Maryland seniors spent their prime working years in Maryland, consume less resources on average. Children are out of the school system, drive less, so there's less wear and tear on the road. Retirees spend money and are active on charitable giving. If retirees leave the state, Maryland doesn't collect anything on its inheritance and estate taxes, and some federal programs are based on state population. So if Maryland does lose more of its seniors, gets less federal subsidies, and that's bad for the state. The Atlas moving survey has some very interesting information. If you can take a look at it, it really some of the most important facts are Maryland has a 4% deficit between those that are leaving the state and those that are entering the state.
Mr. Sundell, could I ask you to wrap it up, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Okay. It's very serious, the problem on the senior. Give me one more minute, please. I put 10 hours in putting my testimony together because I view it as important. Maryland has a 19% deficit from the Atlas survey on those that are leaving and those that are entering. Virginia has a 4% deficit. Delaware has a 19% surplus. Pennsylvania, a 5% deficit. South Carolina has an 18% surplus. So, and Maryland is also losing its tax base among higher income people. Upper middle class defined as 100,000 to 150, and those that are over 150, the deficits are 7.3 and 3.6%. So Maryland being a very high tax state, as I said, the sixth highest according to the Kiplinger survey, Maryland needs to get its house in order, in my opinion, and just raising taxes and not looking at what it's gonna do to the tax base as a whole and be competitive to allow people that would prefer to stay in the state, stay
Thank you.
in the state.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's it for your witnesses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are all the witnesses.
Thank you
that
very
signed
much.
up for the bill. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Senator Hettleman. Senate Bill 369.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Shelley Hettleman, Senator from District 11, and I am pleased to be joined here today with members of ESTAT. This is a bill that has to do with property taxes and property tax exemption, and it also really has to do with fairness. As we all know, our state revenue comes from a variety of sources. Prime among them are our property taxes. Those revenues collected go to providing essential services in our community, whether that's healthcare, whether that's keeping our roads safe, our fire emergency services is in place, infrastructure, public amenities, et cetera. Under our current law, there are certain properties that are tax exempt, and we have good reasons for providing those exemptions. There are also a number of properties that have non-linked purposes. They're tax exempt properties that are using their property to collect income in ways that are really not consistent with their charitable or exempt uses. And so this bill seeks to address some of those loopholes. This bill gets at those properties that are tax exempt but have some rental income and they generate revenue. And this bill would allow that issue to be addressed by allowing the department to recognize some of that rental income value and tax it. So without further ado, again, it's a fairness issue. We're asking our localities under the current system to forego certain revenue that could be used for very important essential services, and other people, property owners, to take on a larger tax burden. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to ESTAT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael Higgs, and I am the Director of the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. Senate Bill 369 would require properties that are exempt from real property tax to report any rental income to the department to be assessed for the value added. Currently, property tax exemptions are granted to properties for very limited uses, as outlined in Chapter 7, Subtitle 2 of the property tax article. Property that generates rental income is not recognized under current statute as exempt property. However, the department generally does not conduct real property assessments for properties that are exempt from taxation. Because of this, exempt properties can construct anything from cell phone antennas to a restaurant and enter into long-term leases without paying any property taxes for the added value. By requiring exempt properties to report value-added rental activities, Senate Bill 369 would help local jurisdictions capture missing revenues by making the department aware of non-exempt properties that are subject to taxation. Accordingly, the department respectfully requests favorable report on Senate Bill 369, and I'd like to thank Senator Hettleman for bringing this important issue to everyone's attention. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next. You're just window dressing.
He's here in case you guys are ganging up on him.
Okay, okay. Kevin Canali? Senator Jackson has a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to Mr. Higgs.
Yes, sir.
So if you're not making physical visits, how are you going to determine this?
So this bill requires people to enter, when they enter into a lease agreement, that they have to let the department know. And once the department has notice of this, then we're going to be able to properly assess that portion of the property that is being used for the non-exempt purpose. So right now, we're not getting notification of that non-exempt use, so we don't know to send somebody to take a look at the property and make sure that that it's being assessed properly for taxation purposes.
So you're not getting notified that this is going on. So how do you know it's going on?
Correct.
No.
So
Of
under
course
the
not.
bill, they would have to notify.
I understand that.
And also, it's just to be clear, it doesn't apply to leases that are under a year.
I got you.
Okay.
So my question is, if you don't know and folks aren't reporting it now, you are assuming or you know that folks are doing this.
We know.
Got you.
We know darn well that they're doing it, and we have conversations with them sometimes when we find out and fix the situation. And that's how I know it's happening, because we go back and fix it when we find out. And it's usually, you know, somebody letting us know that, hey, there's a.
That's what I needed to hear.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Kevin Canal.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of Senate Bill 369. You do have my written testimony, and I won't belabor the points. I think Senator Hedelman hit it on the head. This is a fairness issue, and these revenues go toward things like schools, public safety, public health, all these things at the local level that counties do every single day. I do also want to mention that this is not a new concept. Our personal property tax exemptions for like equipment, machinery, that is based on use rather than ownership, right? And we also do this with federal income tax, where even though a generally tax exempt entity is exempt, any non-business income is taxable, right? So you don't just get a full exemption. If you're not operating under the rules of the exemption, that other income is taxed. Same principle should apply here. We know this is happening, as Director Higgs said. This is a great way to close the loophole and make sure that we're promoting equity in taxation across the state. And we support the bill and ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Senator Hedelman, you've got the next bill too, Senate Bill 528.
I need to do a quick switch of files, please. I could bring up my panel.
Yes.
Please. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Shelley Hedelman again, Senator from District 11. I am here today in support of Senate Bill 528, which provides an income tax credit for non-public school students' bus transportation expenses. And I will say from the outset, he is not here, but I need to give a big shout out to Senator Quarterman, who served on a task force with me during the interim to study this issue. We passed legislation last year. During the interim, we took a deep dive into this important issue, and I neglected to put him on as a co-sponsor of this bill, which he desired. And so mea culpa, I'm very sorry about that. Some of the panelists here were also members of the task force. And what we really did is examined, we had all kinds of representatives from educational institutions, we had parents, we had different representatives taking a look at how it is we transport our children to schools. And in the public school system, many students get there by the bus. In the non-public school system, many have to rely on their parents providing that transportation. I know in my neighborhood, there are cars whizzing through all the time because there are students who are going to non-public schools who don't have the ability to be able to get there by bus, or they are walking. In some instances, many instances, it really provides a safety issue. There are a lot of cars on the street at exactly the same time, getting to school and then let out in the afternoon. And it really provides road hazards to the rest of us, as well as environmental hazards to the rest of us. In this in 2022, there are over 800 private schools in this state serving almost 140,000 students, and they all need to get to and from school each day. And many of them, as I said, are kind of juggling how they do that. They either have to, their parents either have to provide the transportation or pay the schools. And I think very few of the private schools that provide their own transportation. This bill would create a tax credit for parents for daily bus transportation to and from school with a maximum credit of $1,500 per student. And the eligible schools that we are talking about here include schools that participate in the non-public school textbook and technology program, which those are schools that have lower tuition and often have families that can least afford the tuition there. And so this bill supports those families' ability to get the kids to school, taking cars off of our roads. We are very interested in reducing our greenhouse gases. We are very interested in reducing our road casualties, of which there are many, too many, and decreasing our carbon footprint. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my panelists to provide a little more background and history to this issue. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair.
We're flexible here.
Yes. Good afternoon, members of the committee, Budget and Tax Committee. My name, for the record, is Rabbi Ariel Sadowin, Executive Director of Agudath Israel of Maryland, President of Maryland Cape, representing the Orthodox Jewish schools as well as the non-public schools across the state. I'm here showing support of Senate Bill 528. I'd like to thank Senator Hedelman for sponsoring the bill and her leadership on this issue, as well as Delegate Attar on the cross-filed House bill. I had the opportunity, as the senator mentioned, to be the Senate President's appointee to the task force this past interim. And I want to acknowledge the great work of the entire task force, the elected members, as well as the appointed members, and MSDE for their role in that as well. As I'm sure you've seen that report, a very comprehensive report, and a very admirable job that was done. I submitted written testimony, and therefore there's no reason to go and repeat a lot of the points. I just wanted really to hone in on one point specifically, and one aspect of student safety, aside from road safety and the traffic and the concerns about that, is something that we have going on right now, unfortunately, in a number of communities, the religious communities across the state. A heightened awareness of safety due to the fragility in some certain parts of the world. Students walking to school and being around their religious school could be a variety of faiths that we're talking about, have a heightened concern, and the ability to have a program that has these kids on buses arriving safely at their school door would provide that protection that walking to school does not have. And otherwise, I just request a favorable report, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, honorable members of the committee. My name is Ariel Frankston Morris from Teach Maryland. I will be brief, and first also thank Senator Hedelman for her leadership on this. Just like Rabbi Sadowin, I was privileged to sit on the task force, and I must thank MSDE and specifically thank Gabriel Rose for facilitating the meetings that were so organized, and it was incredible how we all came to consensus at the end of all of these meetings. So I urge everyone to take a look at the report that was submitted. This is really an issue of safety when you have scores of cars arriving at the same location all at the same time. All of these cars are arriving, kids are hopping out of their cars, running into a school building. It makes a lot of sense for Maryland to do what we all we can to encourage parents to send children to school on buses. Please recall that Maryland has a history of transportation tax credits to encourage getting cars off roads, evidenced in the commuter tax credit. Again, similar to what Rabbi Sadowin said, we're experiencing a time of significantly heightened caution for many communities, including those targeted for hate crimes. We must be monitoring and organizing the movement of children, and dozens of cars pulling up and kids hopping out haphazardly is not ideal. So I appreciate everyone's time today and urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Sarah Mirsky-Mickey. I'm the Deputy Director of the Baltimore Jewish Council, which represents the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore and all of its agencies, here today in support of SB 528. Just to kind of give you guys a few stats specific to the Jewish community and kind of where a lot of our children are walking to school right now. A lot of them walk in Baltimore around Park Heights Avenue. It's a very, very busy street, but it's also a street where there have been hate bias incidents for visibly Jewish people in the past several years. And so especially for our kids going to school, we're very concerned. Maryland last year had an 84% increase from the 2021 to 2022 increase in anti-religious hate bias incidents in our state. And the vast majority are targeted at the Jewish community. And Maryland is a top 10 state or top bottom state, if you want to put it that way, in terms of anti-Semitic incidents. And this is all before the Hamas terror attacks of October 7th. So we're very concerned about our kids' safety. So for these reasons, we ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee. I'm Garrett O'Day, Deputy Director of the Maryland Catholic Conference, here on behalf of our around 50,000 students in our Catholic schools statewide. We thank you for considering this bill, and we thank Senator Hedelman and Delegate Attar for championing this bill, and as well as Senator Quarterman for his service on that great task force. Again, a big shout out to Gabriel Rose at MSDE for running a very well organized task force that considered all options for legislative proposals for non-public student transportation. Of course, as a Catholic Conference, we do take many positions in favor of policy that protects our environment, and this is one of those. It would help to alleviate, this bill would help to alleviate traffic congestion and prevent hundreds of extra car trips on the road statewide in the morning. Good example is up the road. We'll soon have a very large new public high school. You all see it being built off in 97. Across the street from there is our largest Catholic high school in the Archdiocese of Baltimore, Archbishop Spalding. So it's been there for years. This is a good example of imagining what would happen if 1,300 parents in that school dropping off their kids at the same time as a new public high school across the street would have to do so at the exact same time, leading to a lot of traffic congestion. And just imagine how much this bill would help take the cars off the roads if parents were able to pool their busing and minimize traffic every morning and afternoon. A good example of where this works is Senator Hedelman. Few non-public schools are able to do this, but one example is up in Senator Corey McCrae's district up in Baltimore City. Archbishop Curley is able to do a little bit of pooled busing for parents. I just want to point them out because this tax credit amount is perfectly commensurate with exactly what the cost is per student in order to pay for the busing for those students that are able to exercise that. And that alleviates dozens of extra car trips during both rush hours, clogging up traffic in the neighborhood. And but many parents and schools can't afford to do this and set this up. So we ask that you would, through this bill, please support our kids and our parents, like many other states do. New York, Pennsylvania. New York's a great example. They've been providing non-public school transportation to students for decades. And we thank you all for your consideration of this bill.
Thank you. We have one virtual witness here, Judah Prero.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Judah Prero, and I'm a resident of Baltimore City who's been engaged in the practice of environmental law for over 2 decades. Earlier in my career, I served as a Maryland Assistant Attorney General working at the Maryland Department of the Environment. I was counsel to MDE's Mobile Source Program, which is the division that deals with the air pollution impacts from cars, trucks, and buses. And so this is an issue that is of that I have deep care about, and I've been working on for many years. I've submitted written testimony detailing the environmental issues that the bill will address, and so those can be found there. But I just, in conclusion, want to emphatically express my belief that promoting mass pupil transit can have environmental and health benefits that accrue to all Marylanders. The expenditure is a worthwhile investment, and accordingly, it's my hope that the committee reports the bill out favorably. And thank you for the time, and happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much. Senator Hedelman, we're going to take a little detour here because you have 18 witnesses for the next bill, and the 2 after that only have 1. So we're going to take those and then we'll come back to you if that's okay. So we'll do Senate Bill 437, Carroll County Senators.
Madam Chair, I'll bring up my witness if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is a local procurement related bill. We thought about bringing 16 or 17 witnesses, but we decided just one would do. No, it's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the Budget and Tax Committee. Before you today, Senator Reedy, before you today to present Senate Bill 437, Carroll County Contracts and Purchasing. Very simply, we're wanting to raise our limit for our formal bid limit from 25,000, which it has been at for a long time, to 50,000, joining, I believe, 6 other counties at that formal bid level of 50,000, to what the level at which our procurement officer can authorize purchases. Our Senate delegation, actually our whole delegation, Senate and House, voted unanimously in support of this bill. I'll have Mr. Mike Fowler with me today, who represents Carroll County Commissioners and Carroll County government. I might just like to turn it over to him unless anyone had some questions for me.
Yeah, we have a letter.
If you don't have a letter, you'll have one in the next hour. Sorry.
Nice to see you, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, good to see you, members of the committee. Here on behalf of the Carroll County Commissioners, not much to add to what Senator Reedy said, other than a dollar doesn't get what it used to. Last time we raised our threshold for formal bids was back in 2001. So we think this brings us up sort of modern standards. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. We're joining 6 other counties that are at 50,000. Several are actually at 100,000. So on behalf of the commissioners, we ask for a favorable report on the bill.
Very good. Yep, we got a letter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Hershey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate you squeezing us in. For the record, Senator Steve Hershey to present Senate Bill 530, which is a local bill that alters Cecil County's filing date for submitting their annual financial report to the Department of Legislative Services and its annual audit to the state legislative auditor from October 31st to December 31st, and joining 11 other counties that do so. You should have letter of support from the Cecil County delegation and the Cecil County executive. I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 530.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Senator Hedelman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think the enthusiasm for this bill is such that it has brought out a number of community members in support. So I am very happy to be here today. Shelley Hedelman, Senator from District 11. This is a bill that addresses a critical need in our community. We have just made a multi-year commitment through the blueprint for Maryland's future. And we also, that bill is meant to reform our public school system so that our students graduate getting a world-class education and go on to be productive citizens of the world. One of the things that hampers their ability to become productive citizens is if they are unhoused or have instability in their housing. And you're going to hear from some folks today about what it means to someone who has to move from school to school because they don't have stability in their housing and they are at risk for eviction. This bill would create an eviction prevention fund, a rental assistance fund, and use the community schools as a means of getting that eviction prevention effort to those families greatest at risk for eviction. We know just from January to October that over 18,000 families were evicted in Maryland. That is a lot of families. And we know that an enormous percentage of those families, I think it's around 90%, have children in them. And those children are in our public schools. I actually, at our dinner last night, I happened to be talking to someone who was asking me about my legislative priorities. And I mentioned this bill because I think it's a really important bill. And he looked at me and he said, I was evicted when I was a child. And I, in 1 year, had to go to 3 or 4 different schools. And that had an amazing impact on me and my ability to make friendships and my ability. I had been in one school and had to stop and had to pick up and go to another school that has a totally different environment, a totally, different teacher, and develop new friendships. And it sounded like he just sort of stopped interacting with other kids because it was such an enormous challenge. And so much of what is contributing to the success of our kids, as we all know, especially over these past many years, is their social and emotional health. Eviction has tremendous impact on social and emotional health, but it also has tremendous impact on people's physical health. And some of the experts here today are going to talk about that. This bill has a $10 million mandatory appropriation. So I just want to be clear about that. We know this committee, under the leadership of this chairman, has made it very clear that we are not going to put $10 million into this program. But I do think it is so important because we have this state, and unfortunately in the budget, there is nothing this year. Last year we put in $2 million of rental assistance, emergency rental assistance. And that is really important. And I think it is really important for us to continue this. One of the governor's priorities this year is his housing package. We all know, and it's in my testimony here and it's in others' testimony, what a dearth of housing we have in this state. It is a tremendous need. It is driving up the cost of housing. People are staying in their homes longer because of high interest rates. They're not moving. And we just don't have enough product, right? So both in terms of purchasing and in terms of renting. And rents have gone up exponentially. Coming out of COVID, where we had an enormous influx of federal assistance, our Department of Housing and Community Development developed the expertise to get this emergency rental assistance out to families. They developed the infrastructure to be able to identify and manage getting the funds from where they needed to go, doing the assessments, working with landlords. The payments went directly to landlords. That's what we're talking about in this bill too. One of the wonderful things about the blueprint is we created community schools, and those are schools that have been identified as being in the most at risk and to be the center for wraparound services. And we have said all different kinds of services, healthcare services, tutoring, transportation, all different kinds of services. And why not rental assistance? And this program would create a means using the community school as a vehicle to get to help identify those families at greatest risk of being evicted and having to endure that instability, and using the expertise of the department to be able to get some funding to those families. Now, we have this set up in such a way, we're in conversations with the Department of Education, with the Department of Housing and Community Development, with nonprofit organizations, and I think we can figure out the mechanics of how to do this. Everybody has been wonderful to talk to, has been very collaborative, very open to the idea. They realize the importance of the idea. And so I would ask the indulgence of this committee to be able to work out some of that infrastructure and what it would look like, because I think it is eminently doable. So there is a problem, and I think this is a really creative, interesting, important, essential way of addressing that problem. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to others who have a lot of expertise.
Before you do that, let me just recognize Senator Carrozza, who's from the EEE Committee, who's secondary on the bill.
Great.
Thank you, Senator.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kathy Hogan. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law, where I teach and practice public health law. I'm here in support of Senate Bill 307, not just because Senator Hedelman is my own personal senator, and I would say yes to all of her requests. She's a terrific representative for District 11. But because this marries together two very important social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are those factors outside of your genetics, outside of access to health care that impact your individual well-being, but also have an impact on the public's health. Housing and education are two of the most important and interconnected social determinants of health. I don't need to tell you all because you have done really good work in the last couple of years, particularly in addressing issues related to landlord-tenant relations to make things a little more fair for tenants. You created the right to counsel at eviction proceedings for tenants, incredibly important. And my colleague Matilda Smith will speak to that program. We're still operating at Cary Law very proudly. But for some folks, having good laws, having access to a counsel isn't what's going to keep them in their home. They are in acute financial need. And that's what this bill addresses, those families. So that's the housing stability part of this. But it's married to educational stability. And as Senator Hedelman explained, when kids can stay in their house, they can stay in their schools, their educational attainment skyrockets. They can achieve what they're meant to achieve in school. Then they become, across their lifetime, healthier people, more productive people, and they contribute to the community. So it improves the individual health in those families and for those children and for our communities writ large. And so let me just push back a little on the fiscal note and say this. It's right. They're right. It's $10 million. But what we don't look at is the qualitative and quantitative benefits that come from taking families and kids, improving their lives today, tomorrow, and improving their health throughout their lifespan because they've been able to achieve the education they received in our great public schools here in Maryland because they didn't have to switch around. So for these reasons, I urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 370. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say something real quick about that, what you just said at the end. Look, what we have done already is made huge commitments to the degree that we can't afford at the moment. I mean, the long-term commitments.
I more than understand.
We can afford things now, over $3 billion that we need to come up with in the coming years. So part of what we're trying to figure out right now is what can we do now and what can be added or not added, given all the desire to do all the good stuff that we've been talking about. Senator Hedelman mentioned in the blueprint, all the wraparound services, all those component parts. It's funny, when I started this really 25 years ago in public office, no one talked about sort of the holistic view of folks. There was a silo here of housing, there was a silo here of mental health and this and that, and it didn't. No one talked about it coming together. One beautiful thing since I've been around all these years, it's changed, and I think we really have. I think the legislature has a better sense of what it means to think about the whole person and the whole situation, and we try to do that, and we're trying to do it still. I mean, this is an important bill. I'm not going to downplay that, but we're just going to have to figure out how we can do it. With the money that we're going to have.
I've lived in Maryland since I was 4 years old, and I totally agree with everything you said. I'm proud to live here. And I think we accomplish a lot of good things, and I recognize the financial limitations as well. So thanks.
Yeah,
I do appreciate that.
You bet.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Matilda Smith. I'm a staff attorney with Professor Hoke at the University of Maryland, Francis King Carey School of Law. I teach clinical students in the Eviction Prevention Clinic, which is funded through the Access to Counsel and Evictions Bill. I want to share some personal experience with community schools and providing legal support to those families. When I started at the School of Law, I inherited an existing partnership that we had with the Prince George's County Community Schools, in which my students would provide advice to families who are facing eviction in Maryland courts. The program was, quite frankly, a little depressing. The majority of the families that came to meet with my students had no legal defenses to any of the actions, and there was very little that we could do as attorneys to help them. My students would spend most of the consultations trying to find resources to help pay back rent, and they were generally not successful in doing so. Most of the families walked away with from our consultations were a list of numbers to call or to keep calling back until resources became available. It became very clear to my students how dire the situation was, and I had to explain to them the harsh realities of most of these clients are going to be evicted because they're not going to get caught up on their rent. And even if they regain employment, they will be evicted, and their families, the kids that they have in these community schools that have referred them to our program, will go somewhere else. I don't know. I think that the community schools were an amazing focal point, though, for distribution of services. I was very impressed by the community school coordinators that I met and worked alongside, and all that they did to serve the communities that they're placed in, especially communities that are typically overlooked or have difficulty accessing services, were served through the community schools. These are focal points for the community. Many of the people that we served were non-English speakers, or English was not their first language, and my students spoke to them through interpreters. So I think it is very likely that were this bill to become law, it would actually cause rent support to reach needy families that otherwise do not get access to help. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Matt Hill. I'm an attorney at the Public Justice Center, which is a member of Renters United Maryland, which is the statewide coalition of renters, advocates, and community members who believe that housing should be safe, stable, and affordable. I think, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you as well, echo the thanks for all the committee and the General Assembly has done for renters, making sure that renters will have and do have access to an attorney in eviction cases. It's critical. Also echoing Matilda's point that this is a critical missing component of a more holistic approach to housing. And just getting straight to the point of dollars and cents, there is a report just issued in December of 2023. It's linked on the second page of my testimony by Stout, Risius, and Ross. And it shows that for every dollar the state invests in eviction prevention funds, it saves the state $2.39. And the reason is because of the second point that you also raised, Mr. Chair, which is that housing and all of the issues that we think about are intersectional, right? When we keep people in their homes, the state does not have to pay for folks to go into a homeless shelter. When we keep people in their homes, well, the state is not paying tens of thousands of dollars a year for foster care. When we keep people in their homes, kids can do better educationally, and that's been proven time and time again. So I do think that this program recognizes that intersectionality, it recognizes the fiscal impact, and it is well designed because, just to put a point on something Senator Hedelman said a little more bluntly, that without this bill, the state is going to be pouring billions of dollars into community schools with absolutely no plan on how to keep those kids in the schools when they face that inevitable financial setback. And so this is about not letting that financial setback become a catalyst for homelessness. There's also some important statistics in my testimony about how this program does racial equity as well. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this panel? Thank you very much. So I have a whole list of folks.
I don't think everyone is here, but just.
Okay. Folks who are interested, if you just come up and fill in the seats up front, those who want to testify. And when you do so, just give us your name and we'll check off and see all who's here. Whoever wants to start, if you want to start on the right over, my right over here, that'd be great.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Budget and Tax Committee. My name is Claudia Wilson Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland. I'm here in support of Senate Bill 370, and I want to thank Senator Hedelman for putting this bill together. I'm going to try to be very short. I would just echo what my colleagues said earlier. Housing is education. There's no doubt about that. The General Assembly has also made a significant investment in the blueprint, but it'll never be successful if students facing housing instability are just rotating in and out of schools. And I had the experience of working for Southeast Community Development Corporation in South Baltimore, and I saw the impact of community schools. And I remember talking with the principal there, and she said, we can never overcome 30% of our population moving during the school year. We're never going to have a successful school if that's happening. And I think about her during that when I look at this bill and I look at the 10 million price tag with it. And I also want to this is a big, expensive problem, this issue particular of child poverty. But we're going to need bold solutions and we're going to need investment in order to overcome it. And I keep thinking about the Blueprint for Education has a neighborhood indicators of poverty report. And I hope folks get a chance to really look at that. And it is exactly overlays housing and overlays health problems in our state. It lines up 100%. So we've got to figure out ways to invest and keep investing. And we are among the 5 wealthiest states in the country. So we can do this. We can be a leader in this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Catherine Davis. I'm the director of Pro Bono Resource Center of Maryland's Courtroom Advocacy Project. We are also funded by ACE and other sources to provide free legal advice to tenants in rent court. Since 2017, we've represented thousands of tenants facing eviction. In addition, where possible, we work with clients after court to help them maintain stable housing. An overarching goal of our project is to promote housing stability among low-income tenants. And we're speaking in favor of this bill today because it will have a direct impact on this goal. So at PBRC, we recognize that regardless of the outcome of the legal case, the vast majority of our clients, almost half of whom, 47%, report having school-aged children in their home, leave court facing an uphill battle to become stably housed. So our staff, including a new eviction prevention counselor, hired in part to do exactly this, continue to work with clients after court to connect them with additional housing resources. Based on this experience, we know that the temporary rental assistance represents one of the best ways to keep families housed and to help them remain stably housed. So furthermore, because so many of our clients are parents with school-aged children, we support this bill because I think attaching it to the community schools is an excellent way to start this program. It's not a perfect bill. There are tenants who will be ineligible for this funding because they don't have a child in community school. We work with those tenants as well, and they deserve stability. But I think this bill represents an excellent place to start. When school-aged child is evicted, they suffer, their parents suffer, the school suffers, the community and we as a society suffer. You've heard statistics already on the impact of eviction on education. Prior to doing housing work, I worked in the education field and I've seen how the two go together firsthand. And I've seen schools struggle, as you mentioned, to provide supports required for students who are experiencing unstable housing. So with that, I'll stop and say we support this bill wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Honori Castro, and I'm Assistant Director of Community Schools at the University of Maryland School of Social Work with the Positive School Center in partnership with Baltimore City Public Schools. I am in support of Senate Bill 370. SB 370 will increase the capacity of community schools to holistically support the needs of its families by going beyond academic services to support general family well-being. Community schools take on a multidisciplinary approach when it comes to addressing the whole child. Every community school has a student wellness team composed of instructional and support staff, including the community school coordinator. These teams work directly with students and their families to get a full understanding of their specific needs and contexts. Unfortunately, many times these teams discover that our students are going through situations that are out of our control, particularly when there is financial hardship. In fact, in 2022, approximately 4,300 students in Baltimore City alone were experiencing homelessness, a staggering 33% increase from the previous year. Funds like those by SB 370 would create a sustainable and reliable way for students to better support those families. SB 370 will address transportation, safety concerns, and relocations for students and families, When students and families are evicted and they must relocate, they no longer have the support needed to thrive. Students and families lose essential resources provided by the school, such as mental health services, academic supports, and after-school programming or extended care. All these resources are essential in ensuring that the students' needs are being met. While the use of rental assistance of up to 12 months, a family can maintain housing stability and maintain supports in place or provide the school with enough time to create a transition plan. Each community school leverages unique community resources to meet community needs and maintains a core focus on children while recognizing that children grow up in families and that children are integral parts of communities. The integrated approach with the addition of rental assistance to community schools will lead to student success, strong families, and healthy communities. Thank you for taking the time to address much needed change in our school communities.
Good afternoon, Budget and Taxation Committee. My name is Felicia Moore. I am the Community School Coordinator currently serving Matthew E. Henson Elementary School in West Baltimore City under Positive School Center through University of Maryland School of Social Work. And if I could quote my principal, Matthew E. Henson is the best school on the corner of Payson and Baker. Matthew E. Henson is one of 8 comprehensive support improvement schools in Baltimore City and one of hundreds throughout the state of Maryland. CSI schools are identified as institutions operating in the lower 5% with overall school performance. We have 3 years to come out of CSI under provisions that require us to improve math literacy and attendance data. If successful, we will continue servicing our families, students, and communities for many more years to come. I am here to share a report from the frontline work, and I hope you lend your ear. 4,300 represents a number that we know all too well. These families are often our latecomers, absentees, and academic low performers. As a result, we do individual plans, SSTs, phone calls, and team meetings to assess the why. Why so many latenesses? Why so many missed days? Why did behavior shift? I tell you why. 4,300 represents our homeless families in Baltimore City schools. These families are constructs heavily impacted by financial crises and displacement. Without stable housing, their status quo impedes our students' flow of knowledge, wellness, financial health, academic growth, and much more. Senate Bill 370 will not rescue all our families from poverty. However, it offers a chance for stability because place matters. Place carries meaning, memories, culture, and people. If a community school coordinator like myself is able to align restorative work with financial tools, such as rental assistance for community schools, we could move the needle on matters that impact our students' educational and holistic experience. Moreover, we could see a shift in generations to come. Again, I represent one of many community schools in need. Can the community schools across the state of Maryland count on your support? I encourage you a favorable report for Senate Bill 370. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Squirrel, so I'm going to wipe the tears from my eyes, right? And I'm going to speak from many of stories that me and Ms. Moore talk to families every day. Again, my name is Jasmine Squirrel. I'm the parent liaison at Matthew E. Henson, the corner of Payson and Baker, right? As of now, we have a family of 5 that will be getting evicted soon, that have to relocate from the school that they have been going to since Head Start. Can you imagine? So I asked, and I want to ask everyone in the room, what is your view when you look out your window? Because my children, I have birthed 3, and they can't even go outside to play in their yard with our family dog. Why? Because we have rats. We have rats. We have children that eat school lunches every day that have come to be a normal, that a big cockroach might run across your table, right? That's not normal. That's nasty. Statistics and studies, you know how many how many diseases roaches carry? How many diseases rats carry? Our children deserve to be able to go outside, play with their friends, not worry about a bullet being thrown across their face or hit in the back. Me as a parent, I shouldn't have to worry about how my children, when they catch public, MTA bus, they get from school. In Baltimore City, we want our children to go to school every single day, right? Because if not, truancy, And I'm an attendance monitor, so we have to send our children. But we have to think of homelessness. Homelessness is really deep. It's no way. How many children do y'all know who has been homeless? I know way too many.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is David Wheaton. I'm an attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, known as LDF. We were founded in 1940, and we are a racial justice organization and founded by one of Maryland's favorite sons, Thurgood Marshall. I'm speaking in favor of Maryland Senate Bill 370. Unfortunately, Black children in Maryland are disproportionately likely to experience eviction and significant negative consequences that result. SB 370 would improve outcomes for children, particularly Black children, by offering rental assistance funds to help families with school-aged children who are at risk of eviction stay in their homes, improving their educational and health outcomes. Evictions disrupt nearly every facet of a family's life and negatively impact a child's health and development. Our recent Harvard Medical School study showed that an eviction can affect a child's health, both through acute effects and its cascading consequences that span through multiple stages and settings of a child's development. These consequences include school attendance issues, mental health issues, harms to neurodevelopment, and overall child health. Childhood eviction significantly and disproportionately disadvantages Black children. Nearly 20% of children born to Black mothers experience an eviction. That is more than half or compared to only just 11% of children born to white mothers. Black households have the highest eviction removal count in Maryland, almost 3 times higher than white resident eviction rates. 1 in 4 Maryland Black children in rental housing face the threat of eviction in a typical year. An estimated 16,200 Maryland school children live in shelters, on the street, doubled up with other families, or in hotels or in motels during the year before the pandemic. These numbers have increased in most recent year as state, local, and national eviction moratoriums have expired and pandemic-related financial assistance has ended. Rental assistance, like what is offered in SB 370, offers the opportunity for families to fight housing instability and reduce the number of evictions. We strongly encourage that this committee give a favorable report to SB 370. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Torres, and I work with the Y of Central Maryland, and I am here to advocate for the urgent passage of Senate Bill 370, which is a vital piece of legislation that symbolizes a beacon of hope for families who face homelessness in Maryland. Now, the Y of Central Maryland is a community school lead agency, one of many, and a consultant for schools in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Howard County. And we believe that education is a cornerstone of empowerment, and that every child deserves a stable and supportive home environment to thrive academically. Now, I have a lot of statistics on here, but I'm going to skip them because I really wanted to speak with respect to the fiscal note of this bill. I understand it's a very expensive bill. I understand that we're possibly not going to get most, if not half, of the amount that we're requesting. But I do want to emphasize that the burden of the cost of addressing this issue, if not invested into by the state, is going to fall on parent liaisons. It's going to fall on community school coordinators. It's going to fall on teachers who, out of their pockets, I have seen pay to prevent families, students facing eviction. I want to also emphasize that community schools, I'm so sorry. I want to emphasize that one of the most promising aspects of this bill is its alignment with the community school strategy, which currently plays a crucial role in our state's education system right now. They serve not only as educational institutions, but as hubs of support, embodying the belief that education is not confined within a classroom wall, but within the fabric of a community. Ask any parent liaison, right, any teacher, how much they have personally invested into supporting families facing eviction issues. And I also know that community schools is a place where families of all backgrounds can share their dreams for their child's futures. And in many communities, I found is the only institution that many constituents still have faith in. Thank you.
Are there others who have signed up to testify who want to come up?
I'll start. Great to see everyone. Samantha Zwirling here from the Maryland State Education Association, representing 75,000 educators across the state of Maryland. I cannot deliver better testimony than that you've already heard, but I will just say that our educators have been asking us to get more involved in housing policy. Our teachers, our educators, our school staff are seeing it in our schools. We can't teach students who are worried about where their next meal is going to come from, where they're going to sleep at night. And this bill does a really great job of building on the progress of the blueprint and our community schools. So we are in support of it and are looking forward to working with the sponsor and the committee to fine tune the bill for passage. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Indigo Knoll. I'm a tenant advocate and organizer with Baltimore Renters United in Baltimore City. I am also a tenant who has been evicted myself recently. I'm using my time today to read the testimony of Sharon Wise, who is a tenant with children in support of this bill. My youngest was born a few months ago, and I'm currently on unpaid maternity leave from my job as a preschool teacher to take care of them. I live in a single family home that was divided into 2 apartments, and currently I'm in a dispute with my landlord because I am being excessively charged for BGE services. But I'm seeking legal help to fix this issue. When the weather started getting cold last year, I began to fall behind on rent because I had to keep my kids warm and the lights on while dealing with these excessive bills. To make matters worse, in September, I was in a car accident and lost wages because I was out of work for a few days. And then in October, my partner and I broke up, so now I am solely responsible for all my family's bills. Eviction prevention funds would greatly benefit me and my family. It would keep my children in their current schools and make sure they have a safe and consistent place to call home. My 7-year-old loves her teacher in her school, and I know changing her school now would negatively affect her ability to learn and grow. Just a little help with my rent to get past these financial setbacks would keep my family together. If we're forced to move, it would be very difficult to find somewhere to accommodate all of us, especially in the same neighborhood where we currently live. I go back to work next week, and if I had the help of rental assistance, I'd be current on my rent and able to maintain monthly payments. Helping my students get good, stable education is important to me, so I asked the committee to give a favorable report on SB 370. Again, that was a testimony of Sharon Wise. I would just like to add, I recently, despite being a victim myself, have had to donate to multiple GoFundMes to keep other tenants housed who had children who are going to end up living in hotels and possibly losing their children because of it. And I've had to do this a lot over the last couple of years. And I really think that that's pathetic, that we can't do better for these students than to have them living in hotels and have them collecting money from the community. We're a very wealthy state, and I believe we can do better. Thank you, committee.
Hello. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Amanda Wisniewski, and I'm an Equal Justice Works Housing Justice Fellow for the Tenants Right to Counsel Project at Maryland Legal Aid. Say that 5 times fast. MLA is the state's largest provider of free and direct legal services to low-income and vulnerable individuals. Our services span a range of legal situations, but housing is the most prominent issue we address, and we ask that the committee report favorably on this bill. SB 370 creates a rental assistance program to be distributed to families and children in community schools. At Legal Aid, our Tenants Right to Counsel project provided representation in over 2,000 cases last year. Over half of them, like you heard from PBRC, involve families with children, right? For my time with the Tenants Right to Counsel project, I had the pleasure of working with individuals experiencing homelessness as a social worker in Baltimore City. So through both experiences, I'm here to tell you that there is a desperate need for rental assistance programming in the state of Maryland. And I also know firsthand what the lifelines provided by community schools mean to their students and their families. Each community school in the state of Maryland is an invaluable asset. Like you heard, community school coordinators are fierce advocates for their communities and provide an impressive list of wraparound services. Things like fresh and nutritious food, physical and mental health care, and opportunities for connection, right? Students and their families who find themselves displaced from not only their homes, but their school lose access to these critical services, right? So it's well understood that eviction has a negative impact on students' learning outcomes. You've heard this, and I know you already know this. But changing schools during the elementary school years predicts a decline in classroom participation and academic performance. Students facing eviction are also 6 times more likely to become recurrently absent. Over 40% of our clients tell us that if they are evicted, they will have to double up with friends or family, find a shelter, or live unsheltered. Another 3% have to leave the state entirely. So we ask for a favorable report, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions, witnesses? Carosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Representing the Senate Education, Energy and Environment Committee today. And Ms. Sterling, I was reading your testimony about the Maryland, from the Maryland State Education Association. Last week, we had local superintendents come in and testify, and they went through all the, responsibilities that our school leadership, teachers' aides have caring for students across the spectrum. And then I noticed in your testimony, you talked about the broadening the scope of having some assistance for the community school coordinators. And I just wanted to ask if you wanted to expand on that.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I appreciate all the testimony from the community school coordinators themselves. We were concerned about adding an additional, let me look at the bill, about adding additional responsibilities for it to be the sole job of the community school coordinator, that they would be in process of identifying the direct payments. That was something that we were concerned about, that we've talked to the sponsors about. And so we just want to make sure that community school coordinators are a part of this, but directing payments was concerning to us, just in the fact of all the other responsibilities that a community school coordinator has.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any other questions? Okay, that concludes the hearing on that bill. Any